Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 209. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know. On this episode, Jim and I are going to be discussing, we're doing a Speeding Bullets style show, and we're going to do a couple of these over the next few weeks. There's a lot of books that we've been wanting to talk about, and because we've been doing a lot of the cover-to-cover stuff lately, we haven't had a chance to really hit on everything. So we decided to do some quick shots and some quick shout-outs to some books. We take a special look at the Bat universe especially, including the return of Bruce Wayne, recent events in Detective Comics. We take a look at Brightest Day, the most recent issue of Green Lantern. Let's not forget Batman 699, and of course things such as the War of the Supermen, which were big things to talk about. So we got in a lot in a contained segment this time around. We're going to be doing a couple more of these because there's a lot of books that really need to be talked about and discussed on future shows. Also, we have some listener voicemails, and we're joined by Ken Hare as we continue talking about JLA Avengers Issue 1. It was funny actually listening back to this recording of JLA Avengers Issue 1. We've just recorded Issue 3. So actually we've done our segment for Issue 2 and our segment for Issue 3. They're all recorded. They just need to be edited. And there's some conclusions I was jumping to in Issue 1 and even in Issue 2 that it's funny. With as many times I've read this book, I don't know why I wrapped my head on this. I'm not going to say anything about it now because when we do get to Issue 3, I do kind of like hit myself on the head and go, what was I thinking? But it's kind of funny. And I'm sure some of you have already like guessed, like, Sean, what are you talking about? But there is a payoff to it, so I'm not going to go any further with it now. But it is very funny listening to this back and hearing a major conclusion that I'm jumping to throughout this whole thing that I'm like, what am I thinking? And this is literally, I've read this book like 5 times, so I don't know why I was jumping to this conclusion, but oh well, we'll talk about it later. Anyway, sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, this is now the time we're going to be checking out the brand new books. We're at the beginning of June, and get ready to check out what DCB Service is doing. They have 40, 50, up to 75% off on amazing deals that you can get on books. And this is a great time for me because I love checking these out. I've always mentioned on the show that not only do I love seeing the brand new books that they're offering at 75% off to kind of, or promotional books that they're doing for 75% off, but I also want to shout out the hardcovers and trade paperbacks that they do. The amazing discounts if you pre-order them. So do yourself a favor, whether you collect monthly or you collect trades and hardcovers, do yourself a favor and check out our friends over at DCBService.com for your pre-order needs. Speaking of DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, Batman the Cult. We actually have a date on when we're going to be doing this. Jim and I have been delaying this on purpose. We're going to be doing a vacation, both of us soon. At the end of June, the beginning of July, both of us are going on vacation. So we decided that the Cult would be something we can record ahead of time and release it during that vacation, so that way you don't lose an episode during that period. One of our goals for 2010 is the same one that we had in 2009, is to do 4 shows a month. Even though we might delay a day or two here or there, we want to make sure that every month you can count on getting 4 episodes of Raging Bullets. So The Cult is going to be one of the episodes that we're going to release because it doesn't need to be set in with current books that are being released and things like that. We can actually delay that and release that while we're gone. So that is probably going to be the first episode we release in July. Is going to be The Cult. We're going to record it sooner than that, though. So if you have any emails or audio comments you want to get in regarding Batman the Cult, now's the time to do it because I'm going to start cataloging those and holding them aside for that particular episode. But that's Batman the Cult. Jim Starlin, Bernie Wrightson, $19.99 regularly, 47% off. Only $10.59 with that great discount from In-Stock Trades. Like I said, we're going to be kicking off July. That's going to be our first episode in July. Will be Batman the Cult. That'll be a for sure. Thank you, InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support us with those great books. I want to shout out a brand new podcast over at ComicAddiction.com. You can check out DC Core Addiction. That's from our friend Chris Parton over at Comic Addiction, and I wanted to shout that out. He's been a good friend of the show for a long time now, and I just wanted to shout out his brand new podcast. Over the summer, actually, we're planning on getting together with them and doing some kind of crossover episode between the two of our shows. I'm always up for that kind of stuff. It's funny, in podcasting, you make a lot of friends, and you want to do episodes together, and with scheduling and recording your own show, it's often hard to do all the things that you want to be able to do and keep your show on a regular schedule. So I'm hoping this summer that we're able to do that because it's always a lot of fun for me when we have either guests on the show or we're able to do kind of crossover things like that. So hopefully that's something that'll come about this summer. Don't forget to check us out at getyourgeekonradio.com. Getyourgeekonradio.com, making geek chic. It's an online radio station. It's very cool, and we're proud to be a part of that. Also sponsoring us is comiccollectorlive.com. Comiccollectorlive.com, your source for your comic book management needs. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we go over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
I like that. Enjoy the show. It's like the build-up to the end right now. Without further ado, let's jump into some speeding bullets.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Jim, for this episode, we decided to do a speeding bullets segment. We started taking a look at a bunch of books, and you figure we'd just start chatting about ones that came to mind. The one I really want to talk about to kick off is The Return of Bruce Wayne. We're 2 issues in right now, and it's funny, when I look at issue 1, it kicks off with Batman versus Vandal Savage. And the big question out of the starting gate, why is it so dangerous for Bruce to survive to the 20th century, to the 21st century, actually, in this case, himself? What will happen? Is it because he's going to meet himself? Is it because he could change his own history or the history of the DC Universe? Is it this creature that's following him that we don't want to come to present day? Rip Hunter's involvement in all this, obviously, is because of the fact that we've got a major issue in the time stream. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I'm guessing some of it is tied into this creature, but what did Darkseid do to him? Because he's basically like a time bomb, literally a time bomb, where if he comes to present day, which the assumption here is by Superman and all them is that Bruce can survive anything. So this guy is going to be able to survive through each of these different eras to present day. So it's interesting to see how this is all going to play out.
Yeah, I was glad to see this wasn't just about him dealing with the Omega Sanction and just the regular, trials and tribulations of going through multiple lives. There's something beyond that, and that's the kind of a cool thing, because at first we were just thinking, okay, it's just Bruce Wayne, he's got to fight back, remember who he is, does he have enough the mental discipline to beat the unbeatable? Well, it's not even just that. It's one level beyond that. And I thought that was a nice twist to put on this whole return of Bruce Wayne. It's not just about what we thought, but there's a little bit more to the story.
Well, it is specifically from the Omega Sanction, though, because that's what Darkseid did this to him. This is the Omega Sanction that he's dealing with and going through. That's the main premise on the whole thing.
See, I'm taking it that it's something beyond the Omega Sanction, that this isn't just the Omega Sanction is the one part of it, but there's another level to this that Darkseid planned for this, and Darkseid figured that anybody who could survive it would be Bruce Wayne, so he's going to do one extra little kind of, even if you beat me, I still win kind of deal.
Okay, we're seeing it the same way.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you're saying. I took it as part of the whole thing that Darkseid did to him with the Omega Sanction was that he set him up. But you're right, more so than the usual way he would handle the Omega Sanction, he's assuming that this guy is going to survive and make it to present day, and bam, that's where the problem is.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really cool. Boy, you've got thunder going on there is a big level.
Oh, yeah, we got some massive thunder and lightning going on, and it's kind of interesting as we're talking about just the Omega Sanction. I get this going on in the background, the forebodingness of the storm.
I'm going to say that any doubts that I may have had as far as who I wanted to be Batman have dropped as soon as I started reading this issue. I just plain miss Bruce, and I give them for credit for keeping him off the page for so long, because this is an issue of not only that absence makes the heart grow fonder, but when you get him back and you get to see his distinctive personality here, I think it is one of the cool things about this, because now that I'm seeing him again, I'm getting what is different about him from Dick Grayson. And it's actually a testament to both characters. The fact that both of them are so richly developed that you can really tell that there's distinctive differences between the two. And even Bruce and Tim Drake. Because we do get to see in issue 2, Bruce doing some detective work on a major level. And this detective work that he's doing, it's like, even though we saw Tim do it so recently in Red Robin, it is something, his approach... it's almost like he is able to be cold and objective to the events that are going on around him. Not in the sense that he doesn't care, but he really is able to pull out the straight facts and not get emotionally attached to them to analyze them, which I think is a strength of Bruce in the intelligent way that he explores detective work, and how it is slightly different than Tim Drake. And I actually like the distinction between the two, because there isn't a more of an emotional connection with Tim Drake when he does detective work. It shows his personality and the different way that he was raised than Bruce. So I love that I felt like there's three distinctive personalities emerging from Batman Reborn, in that we see what's different about Dick, we see what's different about Tim, and we see what's different about Bruce. And I'm spinning out of this whole event, wherever anybody winds up, I think we've now put these characters, at all three of them, in a very different place of describing for fans long time and new fans who these three are and what they all bring to the table, and how all three of them are very formidable in their own unique ways. And even though they have this relationship with Bruce and they've been raised by and trained by Bruce, Bruce didn't train them to be him. Bruce trained them to be the best at who they are and the best at what their talents are, and just encouraged and enhanced those because they were already there. And that's one of the things out of this whole thing, I'm like, woo, I'm really digging this whole universe right now because of it. That these three, because they're so important to me as characters, I love that it's very clear now that these three are very different people.
Yeah, I tell you, it's funny because you mentioned how Bruce is able to separate his emotional thing, and that really is the strength of any form of investigator, inspector, detective, whichever type of character and or person you're dealing with. It's just the job. It's nothing personal kind of deal, mindset that you have to have, because emotions really can cloud your judgment. If you notice, like anytime you see any good police story, they'll always try to keep someone who's emotionally involved in the crime away from it. Of course, that never actually works out because it's usually the hero involved in the story, but everyone always tries to pull them out of it. And they do that in real life, really, because of just exactly what you're saying. If you have that emotional connection, you could very easily miss something. You could miss one little detail and possibly, something that's important that, somebody else will catch. And I think that's a neat, just mindset that you're talking about. And that was something I really, really enjoyed seeing in this Bruce Wayne. Just that part that does make him Batman, that does make him the world's greatest detective.
It's the same guy that made it through RIP. And I think that's one of the great things about Morrison as a writer is his consistency with characters. He's been very consistent with his version of Dick Grayson and what he's done with Dick Grayson, and that it's very true to the core of who Dick Grayson has been since his creation, and yet he's moved him forward. We're seeing him move Bruce Wayne forward, which is hard to do with a character like Bruce Wayne, because he's been around for so long. What new do you have to say about the character? How do you advance a character? How do you move them forward and yet make us respect him even further? And it really is, he's gotten to the core of what is, we say this guy's the world's greatest detective. What does that actually mean? He's defining that for us. It's not just a tagline. We're seeing it on the page. And I think that's a strength here. It's one of the reasons why are people so passionate about Dick Grayson as Batman? Well, it's because Morrison's doing the same thing that he's doing with Bruce with Dick Grayson. And I get it. I mean, it's very cool. And that's something that I'm just loving right now, that this universe is being... You could be very lazy and just write a great Batman story. I shouldn't even say lazy. It's not really a right word for it. You could just write a great Batman story and not further the character. And because it's very hard to further him, like I'm mentioning. I do feel like, though, I'm like, wow, I'm getting to know Bruce in a way that is taking him back to my childhood, yet taking him further. I remember as a kid, I had a book and record set. And it was, the large... 33, I think it was 33 and a third or something like that, or whatever the sizes were, the old records. You would, it wasn't a 45. One side was a Gorilla Grodd story. You flipped it over. The other side was a Sherlock Holmes teaming up with Batman story. And I remember the detective that was Sherlock Holmes was dressed like Sherlock Holmes and everything, but he had a different name. By the end of it, though, the whole story was very dark, mysterious, and detective-based. It was all detective drama. And at the end, Bruce had pretty much discovered that this guy was Sherlock Holmes. Mm-hmm. You know, that the illusion, the enigma of Sherlock Holmes really existed. You know, that he isn't just a character from the stories, he was this guy. And I remember as a kid being captivated by that because it was a very smart, a very intelligent story. And that's who Batman is to me. And I love that is so strongly being brought back into this. It isn't just that this man has honed himself to be this ultimate combatant physically. It's also mentally. And if you lose that, you lose at the core who Batman is and what makes Batman cool, what makes him different than other characters. I'm a huge Daredevil fan, for example. What I really like about this right now, though, is there's times where writers kind of blur the lines between like what Daredevil is and what Batman is, if that makes any sense. They become kind of very similar as characters, which is really, it's a disservice to both characters. Because there are incredible strengths to both that make them very unique. And this detective work and this way that Batman presents things is very different than the way that Matt Murdock operates. And I love that we're seeing now just ultimate distinctions between these characters and what makes them so cool. I think it's one of the things that I think got lost somewhere along the lines is who is Batman? Who is he really? And I like this. It's just something I'm digging.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the things I'm liking, the fact that they're changing up the art style for each of the different eras.
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice, because normally for one series I like one consistent art style, but the fact that we're looking at this in different times, I'm glad to see we're seeing, a different art team for each one.
But that is a consistency to this series. The consistency of this series is that every issue is going to feature a different artist that hones in on that particular time placement. So I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. I'm just saying I love that this was crafted specifically for that reason. Because I'm with you when you've got a miniseries that's crafted from beginning and the end to be one story. Usually it's wonderful to have either one artist or what did this remember back when Countdown had those. It was the group, that got together. Jason Todd and Donna Troy and Kyle Rayner, and they were traveling through the different time areas. I forget what they were even called right now. But when that group of characters were all traveling from place to place, each series had a different artist on them because it was a different location that they were going to. And Jamal Igle did that great Crime Syndicate one that we love so much with the Jokester, that story. Yeah. And that was something that I really liked about that series was the fact that it made sense to have different artists because the artists were picked to showcase the world in the multiverse out of the 52 that they were doing. And they're doing this in this case as well. The Caveman's son, in going back to issue 1, having the shadow mask that almost made him look like Robin, that was one of my favorite moments, just seeing that. The Batman shield and looking at him almost like a bat god. And as an agent for God because of his landing in the ship on the planet, Bruce's instinctual use of penicillin. And do you think he actually knew what it was at that point? Or if it was it pure instinct, or was that part of his memories coming to the surface? How did you take that?
That was pure instinct. I think it's he didn't know what it was, but he knew what it was. He couldn't say, well, this is penicillin. You know what I mean.
I know, I'm just laughing. He didn't know what he was, but he knew what he was.
He knew that was the healing, thing, and he knew this would do that. Like that. He wouldn't have taken like a batarang and stabbed the kid with it thinking, oh, does this heal? No, he knows that's the weapon.
So he does know to a certain extent.
But it's not, he didn't know exactly that, that's the batarang. He wouldn't have called it by name. He just knew that was the healing thing, that was the hurting thing, like that kind of stuff.
It does go beyond instinct then, though.
Yeah, but it's that basic level.
Right. I think it was more like when he found out the name of the caveman was Joker. He was reacting and not 100% sure why. Because we do get to see more of this. And it's interesting as he seems to be becoming more aware as he's moving through the eras. Which does lead me to the question, do you think that Bruce is going to be able to resolve this on his own? Because he tells Superman to trust him. He's and he's talking about him. Is he really because he seems like almost coherent in that one moment there when he's telling them to trust him, that he worked so hard to get to this point, and he takes their time bubble and goes... Well, I guess we're going to find out where he goes. Yeah. He takes their time bubble and essentially traps them at the vanishing point, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they're in some severe danger.
Not only traps them at the vanishing point as the time is finally breaking down.
Well, that is the
time
point.
Stream is is finally ending.
That's the whole nature of the vanishing point. Is really they're at the last few minutes of everything. So he's basically left them there because he can't have them stop him. So do you think Bruce is actually genuinely going to be able to stop this himself? Is he coherent enough that he's going to be able to do this? Or do you think it is going to be the help of the other heroes that's going to enable this? What do you think it's going to be?
I think DC is going to swerve us, and the actual universe is going to be destroyed, and they'll have a full reboot of the universe.
Bam, that's it.
That's the big swerve.
You heard it here first.
Bruce messes up and the universe is destroyed.
Sorry. It's all over. Every storyline you're following. Brightest day is gone.
Yeah.
It's not so bright, is it? I do think I'll let you go back to it because I know you've got an honest answer other than that. I think Bruce is going to do it. I think we're going to see what we saw in R.I.P. One of the joys of R.I.P. was at the end I was like, oh my God, dude, like set everything up himself. And he found a way to one-up the people that so carefully and so meticulously took him down. Because they did take down Bruce in that, but yet he prepared for it. And he found a way beyond it. And I loved that about that mystery was that even though I was traveling with Bruce, he was one step ahead of me. I think this is going to be another story where we're going to find out Bruce is somehow one step ahead of us. These little tidbits where he's getting his memory back, he really is formulating a plan as he's going along. I think that's what's happening. I'm not 100% sure yet. This is speculation, but I get it's funny how because of how Morrison has defined him for me now, he is this guy that on one level is so able to analyze a situation and so able to formulate a plan that he sees things in a way that we just don't. And he is going to be able to somehow be one step ahead. We're going to journey along with him and see how he does this and go, oh my God, he did not just do that. I love that. I mean, I love that I feel that this is the way the ride's going to go. I'm not saying I would be against, if it does turn out that the other heroes really do need to stop him, I'm not going to be against it because I'm enjoying the ride and the journey. But I'm convinced now this Time Masters miniseries is about them escaping the vanishing point more so than it is about them stopping Bruce. I think we've seen now that where they've been at with issue 2 is a prelude to Time Masters, and they aren't going to be able to stop him. They're going to just have to escape themselves, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And I'm in complete agreement with you on just the assessment of Bruce. You know, time is on his side. And I say he lays out something, and we're seeing clues in present day that Dick Grayson and Alfred and them are seeing, but these are clues that Bruce would have already seen, identified, and gotten the information. I'm saying there's going to be some type of message that Bruce left to himself going into Final Crisis that would tell him this is what's going to happen, this is how you prepare for it. So there's going to be one little scene that we never saw in Final Crisis that we're going to see at the end of this. That's going to be the final piece of the puzzle showing why Bruce ultimately defeats Darkseid, and not only just the Mega Sanction, but everything he has planned. I say this is all Bruce saving the day, and that Time Master series is them trying to save their own butts, getting back in the time stream. And to be honest, I'd laugh my head off if Bruce ends up saving them as well. If the end of their series is they're like, there's nothing we can do, we're done. Next thing you know, the time bubble appears, and Bruce is like, anybody need a ride? I'd love to see that whole deal, because you know what? As much as a Superman guy as I am, I do like seeing this guy who has no superhuman powers, who basically is just a extremely disciplined man, mentally and physically, beat these superpowered entities, these huge cosmic events that he really, if you look at it, he should have no place in, but because he is Batman, because he is so cool, and because he prepares for everything, he's able to not only deal with them, but take them down. I think that it would just be a great story.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And I think one of the things that I'm really liking about DC right now is the fact that every character has their own distinct thing. You know them as individuals. There's nothing cookie cutter about anybody. So a lot of the compliments I just gave to Morrison can be applied to a lot of the writers right now writing the heroes throughout the DC universe. There's something unique and fresh about each title when you pick them up because you're reading very different characters. And I love that distinction. I think you get different storytellings now from these writers who are really trying hard to pin down what makes this character unique, what makes them special, and how are they going to react to situations. It makes it fun and diverse as far as if you're not liking one title, for whatever reason, because you're not identifying with the character, there is something to jump onto. Some very cool moments are when he jumped to save the sun and donned the mantle of the bat, and used his grappling hook to defeat Savage. This whole pit, he was dead there. I mean, any other person, you're tied up and they're like ready to sacrifice you or whatever. And Savage was just gloating at this point. But it really was for Savage, this was a power play for him. He does these intimidation moves, and it shows that throughout history, the qualities of Savage were very much the same qualities that we saw about him in present day. He's a little bit more refined now, so to speak, but he still had those same elements about him that we saw in the past. Early Savage being thwarted by Bruce, and will we find out later that Savage does have memories of these interactions with Bruce? Because this series does define time in an interesting way, and I think Morrison's done a brilliant job of explaining continuity changes and how all those stories actually did happen still. With this explanation of time running forwards and backwards, and then also running laterally, this web that he's crafted just shows that anytime there was a continuity change or something like that, it's just lateral from the other event. Mm-hmm. These things did all happen. So it's kind of a neat way for fans that are like, I was really into that variation and that version of the story. Morrison basically is crafted for fans that are like, I am a continuity nut. I like continuity. I don't get angry as much as I used to. I've seen things a lot more for what they are now, and I've come to respect the fact that there's reasons to tell better stories, and if you need to change things in order to tell that better story, that's great. But Morrison's done a really neat little way through Final Crisis and this, showing how, time does go in multiple different directions, not just forward and backwards, but also sideways. And, I loved, Rip Hunter talking about how if you're looking at our time from a different angle, we'd look very flat, because of that angle. And it was interesting just to hear that explanation. I'm like, wow, this is just kind of a nifty way to pat fans on the back and just say, look, I get continuity. I get why you want everything to fit together neatly. You want to be able to do the math and be able to see all of your stories from your childhood to present day, or however long you've been reading comics. You want to see them all fit in. Look, they do. And it was kind of a neat thing for me. I don't know if I want to say that he, to a certain extent, is doing that in this story. Because he has been referenced in interviews as talking about how there was something neat. I don't think that was the purpose of it. But I think it was something that he realized, wow, this really does, for fans, help them to put all this together and do that. I like that. It's just something to me. It's a neat little Easter egg that I thought was very, very cool.
Oh, definitely, kind of really cool. And it was funny because it took me multiple read-throughs really to understand what he was saying. So it was one of those things where I read it the first time, I'm like, okay, my head's starting to hurt. What did he say? And I went back through, and it just took my time with it. And I don't know, I do like that explanation. I don't think you can ever wrap everything up in a nice little bow and make everything nice and neat and organized for everybody. But that was a really good explanation of what is the confusing complications that is the time stream.
Mordecai the detective, I want to talk a little bit more about him. I loved that he wasn't identified to us, the reader, as Bruce until later. I love that we got to find out that it was Bruce from him doing things like the knitting needle on the bat. We got to see, wait a minute, this guy's doing detective work. What the... That's Bruce. Yeah. That was such a cool way to discover that. The iron ladle missing from the hook. We knew that the iron ladle was coming into play later in the story from that little moment right there. I loved that you could read this very carefully and see it all play out. It was one of those things like the analysis of the woman being a witch. Is she guilty of killing her husband? More than likely, but that doesn't make her a witch. And that was another clue for us as the readers. Wait a minute, this isn't the real Mordecai, because Mordecai was sent there with the purpose of seeking out witches, and this guy is so much more interested in being the detective and really analyzing the situation for what it is. We got to see clues along the way of who he is, and seeing what Annie, did with him, with, saving him and being able to identify that he had this mark from this dark god. Who is Annie? Is she going to play into this again? Does she have a further role or not? I don't know. But it was interesting to see that because of her nature as a witch, that she was magically attuned and was able to see that, wait a minute, you have something on you. And this was also, I think this is critical to Bruce being able to get out of this himself. She gave him the information that he needed. that he was marked by a dark god.
Yeah.
He knows that now. So everything that Superman told him in the future at the vanishing point, Bruce already knew at that stage because of Annie. So this is something I'm like, well, Bruce already knew this, so maybe he is going to get out of it. That was like my first time where I was like, boy, he is going to get out of this himself because Annie's given him that info. And that's why he's struggling so hard when he does flash forward to the pirate period to hold on to Man of the Bat. I got to remember this time. He's really struggling hard to remember with each time shift who he is because he needs to use that information. So this creature that's following him. And do you think it is just a creature, or do you think there's something more, Jim? Is this creature something that's dangerous if it comes to present day, or is there something else? Is the creature the time bomb? Is that latching onto him because he's traveling through time? Is that what's being sent after him and following him? Does he have to somehow destroy that, or is there something more?
See, I don't know. That's the part. For a while there, I was wondering if the creature is just something that would attack Earth and do some damage, but there's got to be more to it. Because you think about it, if, some super powerful creature's coming through the timeline, there's going to be heroes in the present day. They can deal with it. But there's something different about this thing. But we've seen Bruce hurt it. We've seen Bruce lop off limbs of it, back in this olden times where the weaponry isn't even that much. So if he can do damage back then, why would they be worried about it coming through to the present day? I was thinking it's more of something with, they say if you see creation, it changes creation. That's what I was thinking. It's somehow associated with that. This creature may be like something, so basic in the creation that if it becomes into the present day, it will undo what was done in the past, or something like that is how I was kind of thinking it was. I'm still trying to get my hands on the creature. I don't think but the one thing I do think solidly is I don't think it's just about a physical creature attacking and doing damage. There's something more to this being, whether it is the beginning of time or the beginning of man or the beginning of something. It's it's the whatnot of the universe, and it can't come to the present day because it belongs somewhere else.
I guess when I said it was a creature, I don't want you to think that I think of the creature as like a Godzilla monster or something like that. I don't think of the creature that way. I don't think we've seen the entire true nature of the creature yet, if it is the creature. I think there's more to the story of the creature. What's got me curious about the creature is at the vanishing point, the creature was specifically referenced. Is it a symptom of what's happening with Bruce, or is it a major part of what is happening with Bruce? I don't know. I can see that going either way. I'm not entirely sure its role in the overall story. I'm fascinated by it, though. That's something that's great about this story. I'm just so fascinated by what is really going on with Bruce. And is he going to figure it out before we do? That's always the fun of reading these Morrison R.I.P. That was what was fun about R.I.P. with me. It was trying to figure out what was going on before Bruce did, and knowing that he already did. He already knew.
I think one, I put my money on Bruce figuring out before I do.
Yeah, same with me.
But there's definitely, that is a cool way of his writing. That we see the detective writing, that mystery genre kind of deal, that we're getting pieces along the way, and there's a chance we can figure it out on our own. But eventually, by the end, it's going to be, it's all the pieces. You're like, oh, okay, why didn't I see that? And that, I think, is some of the best Batman stories that you get when you have those type of stories being told.
The Eclipse thing was something that, because he specifically perked up at the Eclipse. And I don't know what that was leading to. I don't know what that clued him to. Do you have any speculation on that?
None. It's funny because with little stuff like that, I write them down and I just store them in the back of my brain. And I'm like, okay, eventually I'm going to come back to that. Or those are things that after this is done, I already know I'm going to read through from beginning to end in one sitting.
Sure.
I already know I'm going to do that because that's how I really, really enjoy these stories, is by after I know the ending, go back through from beginning to start to finish. And that's something I know we're going to see later on is going to play into it. Now, I'm thinking maybe that's one thing I was thinking is maybe it's a trigger to when the next timeline's about to start, when the next jump is about to happen, or something like that. Maybe he's traveling on the mystic properties that is the Eclipse, or something like that.
I don't know. That's interesting. I want to look back at the various different. I want to look back at all the issues on this. I don't. The eclipse is not a red herring. I don't know if it's. I agree with you in the sense that it's a trigger. What is it a trigger to? Nothing here to me is a throwaway, and I love that aspect of this whole thing. Is that there's definitely something about all this that it all connects together. The dots are all being connected. I don't know if it's a reminder to the events that happened with Vandal Savage in the beginning. I don't know if it's some link to something else. I know that if Morrison put it in there, there's a reason, and it's definitely worth noting and trying to figure out. And I'm not there yet with it, but I just thought it was something worth noting because it kind of stood out for me to a certain extent. So it's cool. This story to me, the whole thing is just I'm glued to it. I can't stop thinking about it. Oh, Van Durm, the artist. I'd be remiss not to talk about that. The family that created Wayne Manor, I'm trying to remember what it was. I know Van Durm is associated with the creation of Wayne Manor. So I don't know if this is an ancestor of that person or what's going on. It was a kind of a cool little Easter egg in the whole thing. I'm like, wait, I know that name. I'm going to be honest with you and just admit my own. I didn't go back to actually seek out. I know it was either the person that created Wayne Manor or the family that created Wayne Manor, and I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners have already gotten to that conclusion and figured out exactly who they were. But I thought it was an interesting little Easter egg. I'm like, wait, I know that name, and that was kind of neat. It's one of the things that I really respect about Morrison's writing when he gets involved with a character. He did this with Superman. I think it was All-Star Superman. One of the things that felt so great about it is that thematically it felt so much like everything from the various eras of Superman that made Superman great and true. And I think we're seeing this here with his versions of Batman and what he's doing as well, where he's pulling all of the little parts in to tell an interesting story about Batman and giving us a Batman that is very satisfying and very true to his nature. Can we talk about Batman 699 real quick?
Oh, sure.
Riddler's the focal point of this twisted tale featuring a secret group of villains led by Sebastian Blackspell. Firefly is also a member of this group. They banded together to skim money from Gotham's big bosses. And we've seen in recent months that Riddler, slipping away from being a good guy, regaining his memories of being a criminal in Gotham, his desires for that life are obviously returning as well. It's the criminal's back.
Yeah.
And that to me was something that I found incredibly interesting in this. Would you even use a watered-down version of the Joker toxin to cover your tracks? I mean, Riddler does this to himself. To cover his own tracks, he took a watered-down version of the Joker. I wouldn't trust that.
Oh God, no! It's the Joker toxin. Come on, Joker may have designed the thing so that if you try to water it down, it becomes worse. You never know with what that mind is capable of coming up with. I thought that was a neat way to, one, cover his tracks, but two, I loved seeing the fact that Grayson was able to figure that out, and it wasn't just he is great, as we talked earlier. Grayson is a detective. He's his own style of detective, his own way of dealing it, but he still has that training. He does look at all the pieces, and he does come up with the actual answer and what is. It wasn't just spoon-fed to him. And I love seeing him have that mindset and him being able to look at the facts and whatnot.
One thing I like about Dick Grayson is, and we see the distinction, Bruce is about getting his head around it himself. Yes, he uses Alfred and stuff like that, but in a very different way than we see Dick Grayson use Alfred. And it's one of the things that I really like is that Dick Grayson Batman is a very different Batman than Bruce. And we've seen the growth of him, I agree with you, as a detective, but also we've seen the growth of him as using his interpersonal skills, his team tactics. It's what makes him such a great leader of the Justice League right now. And what I think is going to lead the Justice League, if used properly, into a whole new era. I don't care what outfit he's wearing. The Dick Grayson that's been created here is somebody who, as the leader of the Justice League, is going to be very formidable. I think we're going to see another, well-defined, strong era of the Justice League where people are going to, there's constant references back to the satellite era as being like this amazing kind of perfect era of the Justice League. Like, this is your team. And you see that iconic team a lot of times on T-shirts, the satellite era league. And the reason why is because that is one of those, when you look back to them, they had reservists and people like that who would pop onto the team periodically, regular guest stars, but it was like your iconic version of the league. Enter this current version that's coming up, I think we see another era of this coming. I really think we see like this generation's Satellite League potentially coming out of this. With the players that they're putting on it, I think we're going to see a league that's going to have very big stories that are going to be characters that they can really play around with in their books. I'm loving who they're picking. The certain characters they're picking for this league, it makes a lot of sense to me. They can play around with most of them. Mm-hmm. There's some that clearly they've got to be careful with because they have their own books and things like that. But they're pulling a lot of characters, too, that don't. That can be heavy hitters, can have good relationship dynamics in the story, and you can really push further. I'm excited to see where this book's going to go because of it, because of Dick Grayson, because this character's been so well defined in Batman and Robin right now. Dick Grayson rocks. And you know what? I would be remiss if I once again don't mention Peter Tomasi and what he did with him as Nightwing. Because to me, Nightwing was already there. I was like, if they would have thrown Nightwing in as the leader of Justice League post Peter Tomasi's run, I would have been like, yay, thumbs up. This is where he belongs. I think Tomasi's Nightwing run was a precursor to all this. And it's great to see this character getting his due. And it's going to be really cool to see where that character goes. But I agree with you on his detective work here. Someone was killing the members of this group and threatening other members, such as Firefly, that they would be the next target. And it turns out that Black Spell was just his figurehead. The real leader was the Riddler. And it was a smart move to throw people like Batman off his trail. And like you said, Batman figures it out. But here's my question. Did the Riddler deliberately leave some of those clues so Batman would track him down? Is that his mental issues returning? Like, I agree with you that Dick Grayson totally figured it out. Did he figure it out because of his past history with the Riddler? Because he and Bruce dealt with the Riddler so long, was he able to grab the pieces of the puzzle that the Riddler left dangling?
See, that's an interesting question. Did he leave it to let himself get caught, or is Batman just that good that he was able to find the clues that nobody else would see? I don't know. On one hand, you think about the Riddler, he does have that mental issue where he's got to leave his clues, and he kind of seems like he's off of it, but he also, when we've seen a couple stories where it was Bruce versus the quote-unquote honest Riddler, the honest Riddler was good, but he was not as good as Bruce. Well, so there was always times when Bruce would be one step ahead of him, or maybe know something, or kind of play off of something the Riddler didn't know, kind of deal. So they could be very simply that Grayson was good enough to catch him, but I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm gonna have to keep watching and reading and paying very close attention to the Riddler. Are we going to start getting his little psychoses coming back? Which actually I'm kind of wondering.
You misunderstand me a little bit there, though. I don't take that as diminishing from Dick Grayson, the fact that he would have figured out Riddler's clues. Riddler never left clues with the intention that they would be fully figured out. He left clues in such a way to place Batman and Robin into his own traps. Or he left clues with the intention that his riddles would not be figured out. His psychosis was that he thought he was better at developing riddles than people like Batman and Robin were at figuring them out. That was he thought he was the superior intellect. And it really was a battle of the wills in his mind. So it's a testament, either case, if he left those clues, it's a testament to Dick Grayson that he was able to solve them. Because he really wouldn't have been, if even subconsciously the Riddler was doing this, he really should not have been able to do it in the Riddler's mind. So I think it's an interesting twist either way. I don't know. I really like the bit where the Riddler dressed as Black Spell for the security camera, throwing off suspicion that he was in fact the killer. And that was another clue that, Dick Grayson figured out there. I am wondering how much Riddler remembers. Does he know that Bruce Wayne was Batman? Will this play out somewhere? It's great to see the Riddler being reestablished as an intelligent villain, where you can't take anything at face value. I like right now that I'm not really 100% sure what's going on with him. I think that's a strength. I'm with you that there's nothing on the page right now that indicates 100% what's going on with him. And Batman needs a foe like this. I'm glad that they shelved him as a criminal for a while. It makes his return right now so much more interesting. The fact that he's a gray area. You don't know, he's obviously still going to keep this I guess, he can't really keep the persona of a good guy on the table anymore because he's been outed at this point. But I love that we don't know what he's going to do next, and how is he going to be different when he does resurface? What are we going to see from him? I think we're going to see growth for this character. and it's something that's interesting. Tony Daniel is really becoming an impressive writer to me. I really like what he's doing in the Bat universe. This Batman 699 was an issue that I thought was just great.
Oh, definitely. And I'm really digging what we're seeing. But it's not even what we're seeing, the future that's coming down the line. Because the big question we've been throwing, I know I've flip-flopped multiple times on it. Who do I want to see in the cape and cowl? You know, when I read the Bruce Wayne Returns stuff, I'm thinking, oh, Bruce has got to get it back. But then I read stuff in like Detectives or Batman and Robin or, the Batman stuff. And I'm like, I really like Dick Grayson as Batman. I like the way he is the character, how he handles the mantle, how he deals with that. I'm like, I'm thrown. It really depends on which title I'm reading at which point in time is where I decide who I want to be in the mantle. It's one of those, I want to see where this goes and what's going to happen to, Grayson, to Bruce, to everybody.
I'm going to correct myself on something that I said. What was it, 2 episodes ago or something like that, we were having this similar discussion, and I said that ideally for me, it'd be great to have Dick Grayson in the leadership role of the Justice League, and that would be exclusively where we'd see him, so that James Rouse can really play around with him. And I do want to see him able to be played around with as a strong leader in the Justice League and to have strong character development in the Justice League, because I think that's good for the character. But I'm going to totally echo what you're saying in the sense that when this all ends, while I'm adamantly in the camp that I want to see Bruce Wayne as Batman, I want to see Dick Grayson in a book. And I think we've pretty clearly seen that the Nightwing role, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes, is back on the table again. I know that people. It's funny. I'm very torn because we got a great email from Micah. A voicemail from Micah last episode where Micah was talking about the fact that he feels that he's outgrown the Nightwing role, and this might be something, and this is certainly up for debate. It all depends on how you view the Nightwing role. I view the Nightwing role as extremely iconic, and I think Dick Grayson as Nightwing, I think he's made that role something special. Do you want to see Dick Grayson? Because Micah put on the table that he would like to see Dick Grayson in another role. If it's not going to be Batman, he doesn't want to see him go back to Nightwing because he figures that would be a step back for the character. And I can understand his point. I guess I see Nightwing as a stronger character than that, though, and I see that role as being something more, as something iconic and something beyond. What would you prefer, Jim? Because he posed an interesting question there. Do you prefer the idea that if he's not going to be Batman, because going off of what you had a very emotional rant about how you felt about him as Batman right now and how you're enjoying that so much so, which would you prefer, if not Batman?
Nightwing. I honestly, I also see Nightwing in the same light that you do, with how it isn't just a step. I wouldn't see it as a step back because he is Nightwing. He created that character. That was his growth and his evolution as a hero, was to become Nightwing. He put down the Nightwing role because Gotham needed a Batman. And if it has the Batman, then he can go back into the hero that he was as Nightwing. Now, I would like to see Nightwing, I don't want to say changed, but just a little bit adjusted from what he was before because of his time in the mantle. Because of his time as Batman, I'd like to see a little bit difference in how he approaches life as Nightwing. Maybe a little bit more, I don't want to say more mature, because he already is a mature hero in my mind and in the way I look at him, but just a kind of I still want to keep that same Nightwing that I enjoyed watching, and I enjoyed like that he's an open hero that everyone can approach, and that he's the team guy. I want to see that, but I do want to see more of a Batman-esque quality where he has that presence to him. Nightwing has that kind of bat presence, but not the I'm hiding in the shadow brooding bat presence. Just that presence that people say, yeah, that's Nightwing. Okay, what do we do, man? You call the shots, I'm going to follow you because you're Nightwing kind of deal. So I would like to see him come back as Nightwing, but I want to see him keep that strong leadership qualities that I am seeing in him as Batman.
Here, you know what? I'm going to change the wording of what you said a little bit, but it's not to dispute, because I understand where you're going with this, and I agree with you. I think to me, and this is something that Micah brought up, he felt that Nightwing was Batman light. And I always viewed Nightwing as that was Dick Grayson growing out of the Batman shadow. You know, that was the Robin role had been something he gave up, and when he donned the Nightwing outfit, it was him becoming his own man. And to me, thematically, agreeing with what you're saying, I want to see the same guy that was wearing the Batman mantle in Nightwing. I want to see the same personality traits, the same confidence, the man who really could be Batman. And I don't think it matters if he's wearing a burlap sack at the end of all this. Those character traits should come out no matter what outfit he's wearing. So I'm not against it. If they give him a new identity, cool, fine. If they keep him Batman, cool, fine. I don't necessarily, and I've said it before, I don't want to see two Batman, but if they did it, I'm sure there's a storytelling why they can make it work for me. So I wouldn't be mad. I think that he as a character, though, should be an A-lister from here on out, whatever he's wearing. Like I said, it clearly could be a burlap sack.
I don't think he'd look good in a burlap sack. I don't think it would work for him. I don't think he could pull it off.
Well, I'm not worried about how he looks. I'm worried about how he acts. You can, you know...
You think about it. The whole MO that he has is that he's high action, high acrobats. You know, just the burlap sack, I don't think it would fit. You know, like, it's not his style. He needs to have that sleek power look to him.
But don't you think he's a trendsetter enough that he could make the burlap sack fashionable? Like, all of a sudden, people in the DC Universe want to wear burlap sacks because Nightwing is sporting it and makes it look cool?
I don't know.
Because it'd
be a tough sell.
Yeah, he is the quarterback. He is that guy that, you know, so I really think the burlap sack could work. Why are we talking about the burlap sack like this? This is a really insane conversation.
Yes, it is.
Can we just quickly talk about David Hine on Detective Comics, these last two issues?
Oh, sure.
With Arkham?
Yes.
Such a great follow-up to that.
Speaking
Arkham.
Of insane conversation, Arkham.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I mean, and he really had to go there because we're seeing now that woman who is Arkham's right hand is now positioned herself to be the leader. And I shouldn't say Arkham's right hand. She was really Black Mask's right hand.
Yeah.
And this whole thing that Arkham had this duality where he wouldn't let himself see that he was Black Mask. But it's almost like in curing him, they increased the psychosis, if that makes sense. Like, they have now solidified that he is evil. And we've seen this happen throughout the storyline right there where, you know, he's threatened to, you know, I know where your kid is. I know where this person is. He knows every one of the villains in Arkham so well that he knows how to get at them at their core psychologically. And has become, in a very short period of time, one of the most powerful adversaries inside Arkham. He is the leader of the pack in that place.
Yeah, this is definitely just a talk about, you know, frying pan fire kind of situation for them regarding Arkham. You know, this is, you know, you figure, oh, we caught the bad guy, we locked him in there. No, what you did, you just made him more powerful. And I thought that was just a great, you know, wonderful twist to do to this whole thing with, because, you know, one, you think about, okay, yeah, he's partnering up. You know, you have the female who's quasi-evil, quasi-crazy, who knows what she is now running the show. But add to that, just as this process is going on, Black Mask is getting stronger and more powerful. And I thought that was just an absolute beautiful storytelling just going through, especially with the his quote-unquote special patients that only he was allowed to deal with when we find out all the truth on them. I thought that was like oh, dang, that's cool.
Dude, they weren't there. And wait, they had them so well developed when we got to see those characters. I thought they were there.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow, who are these characters and why don't I know who they are? I love that they were they were showing us where this all came from, that the Joker had a play in this. He was a part of this whole mess. Not only was it Hugo Strange who would get into his head, but the Joker would. And I loved that aspect of it, and that this all came from this toxin getting into his head. And it slowly warped and twisted his mind. Is this guy redeemable, or do you think this transformation now is permanent? Now that he's seen everything and come to terms with it, do you think he is permanently Black Mask? Is there any recovery for him?
Game over, man. He's in all the way, and I don't see any saving him. He's the Joker now. He has that permanent psychosis etched into his brain that I don't see how you could, you know, fix him. Guys like Dent, they've tried to fix, and there's still a little bit in there, and he goes through periods where he's not as evil. Same thing like with the Penguin and Riddler. They're able to maybe make little steps and little improvements in who they are, and who knows, maybe down the line there could be something. This guy is 100% full on, completely a nut jobby, and that is who he is now. The crazy persona is now completely in charge and completely in the game. There is no more of the good person left in him. This is now who he is, 100% locked in.
And I found that completely engaging. It was great to see that that Arkham is not done. I'm not just talking about Arkham himself. I'm talking about the actual facility. There's going to be some twists and turns and swerves and some manipulations coming out of that place. It's corrupt. We've clearly seen from this now that Arkham is corrupt as a facility. And that's going to make Batman's job only harder. Whose job it's going to, whether it's Bruce or it's Dick. I don't care who. It's going to be a very difficult place to deal with. And they've set up, again, an interesting scenario for Arkham Asylum, where there's more storytelling to be coming out of that one. And the Detective Comic issues that we were talking about is 864 and 865, I believe. It was a 2-part storyline. If you dismiss those stories because of the fact that, the Batwoman arc was over and stuff like that, and we're kind of like, I'm not sure if I should read that one, it's a great 2-parter. And the Question story in the back, too,
yes,
really resolves quite nicely, that 2-parter back there with the Question. Because we get to really see her with the whole speaking of Vandal Savage, Cain, the mark of Cain. Do you think, it's the ultimate question we got to ask, do you think Renee has the mark on her now? She wouldn't take off the mask. Do you think she has the mark on her? Or do you think she's afraid to take off the mask to see if she has the mark? Because we saw that it wasn't on Huntress. Do you think it's that Renee knows she has the mark, or that she's afraid to find out if she has the mark?
Well, here's my theory with the mark of Cain. You can't cover up the mark of Cain. That's the whole thing behind it. So even if Renee, if Renee took off with her false face that she has for being when she's the Question, she couldn't cover up the mark of Cain. So I'm saying no, she probably doesn't have it, but it's one of those things where she didn't want to remove the false face because of fear. Right.
It's a psychological thing on her part, not because they both were willing.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm curious to see how that all plays out, because I don't think we're done with that yet. I don't think. I've liked that. We haven't talked a whole lot about it on the show. I've liked that Question backup. That was really a good backup story. I wish that the Question would be in its own book, just because I love the character so much. But if they're not going to give the Question her own book, the backup to me is a great way for us to get monthly serialized Question storytelling. And that's really been the art actually grew on me too, because I was kind of like a question mark on the art as it was going, because I'm like, I don't know, because the Huntress version especially, I was kind of like, well, how do I feel about this Huntress version? As the storyline went on, I started to really get into, it's funny how art, after a while, once I get the atmosphere, tone, and mood, even though there's some variations on characters and things compared to what I'm usually used to, as long as it sets a mood and tone for me that I start to get comfortable with, I'm cool. This was a great example of that, where the mood and tone fit the Question story so well that it grew on me. But the Huntress was the one character, I think, throughout the whole thing that I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this variation of the Huntress, because she really looks a lot different, and to me at least, than what I'm used to with her. And the whole thing grew on me.
Yeah, with the Huntress especially, it took a couple issues. And to be honest, it was funny. I found that when I read multiple issues in a row, like when a recent issue would come up, I would go back a couple issues and boom, 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 like that, read through the story. When I go like that, I find I was a little bit more accepting of changes in art styles and the different appearance of a character, because I have these stories that are this, boom, 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 like that, right in a row, where I'm like, yes, okay, yeah, this is what the Huntress looks like here. So maybe you'll think it's a weird thing, but I need to do that if it's deviating from like the normal. Like Huntress and Birds of Prey is what I think Huntress should look like. And when I see Huntress drawn like that, I'm like, bam, okay, that's my Huntress. when I see any changes, and it's not even just Hunters, it's any character that has like a different appearance, I do need a couple issues in a row to get in the groove going. And also, I like reading stories that way, where you get multiple issues at a time, because it's a nice, flow through that, kind of sets things up.
Well, and with the fact that these are short features, they do read better. I agree with you. I like to read the backups. I do the same thing, actually, with the backups, because there's only a few pages at a time compared to the regular full story. I like to read 2 or 3 of them at a time again to kind of wrap my head around the story, because I do find that with the short features, I tend to forget what's happening a lot in them, because we're getting a little taste here, a little taste here, a little taste here each month. So I do need to go back with those and reread them. And it's not a bad thing. I actually enjoy going back and rereading them. If I didn't enjoy it, I think it would be more of an issue. But this has been definitely one of those, like the question I've had to almost every time it's come out, I've had to go back at least an issue and read what was happening in there before I read through the current offering to kind of get the full enjoyment of what was going on. But this story with Vandal Savage was really good. The eye being pulled out by the arrow. And
yeah.
It was, oof. I'm curious to see what happens with Vandal after this. Where does Vandal go from here?
Yeah, I hope he's back in the DCU like this. I hope this was kind of like a usage to bring him back into the limelight. Like, it was kind of neat that he kind of disappeared when he got the Mark of Cain, because he knew, I've got to figure this out. I got to get rid of this somehow. And so he went off on his own, and that's why we haven't seen him around. But it's gone now, and I'd like to see him play a role in some other hero story, somewhere else. Somebody else use him now, because he is an interesting and a really neat villain.
How do you feel about Colgate right now? That's one of the things that I wanted to bring up at some point in time on the show. I actually was pulling out those little Colgate ads, and I started saving them because I was do you keep them in the book or do you take them out?
I'm a Crest guy now. That's how good that Colgate ad did. I had full tubes of Colgate. I threw them out. I went to the store and I bought Crest just because they angered me so much. I pull them out of the book, and sometimes when they're put in the book, the staples go through them. So then I got to carefully rip the Colgate ad so I can separate them and get them out of the book. Yeah, they had the opposite effect on me, because I was just really, really angry and irrationally angry, to be honest with you, just because they're annoying me. And I started noticing little creases in some of my comics. I'm like, and it's creased right around the little Colgate ad, going, "Dang it, you creased my comic."
Curse you, Colgate.
Yes.
I did like the ads that were in there, not the ones that are those little cardboard flyers like we're talking about. I liked the ads where we got to see like the romantic moments from the DC universe. Those I thought were very good Colgate ads. They were almost redeeming. I was actually pulling out those cardboard sleeves and I was going to save them for you. And it just got to the point where I'm like, the joke's not even funny anymore. I just want to throw it away. Because it's painful to keep pulling these things out. It's funny how those little things in the middle just drive me nuts. Yeah. It doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the issue. I don't know when you did it. I didn't wait till I got to them. I actually opened the issue, pulled it out, threw it away, and read. Then it was a wonderful reading experience. So it didn't take away from the comic at all. I will say this. I will never forget the Colgate name.
Yeah.
I'm pretty, Colgate is a product I'm very well aware of now. So I guess if they were going for that, they got me. I will say the more effective ad for me, though, was pulling the DC characters and those great, moments where we got to see, we got to see something from Hush. We got to see, I like those kind of ads. I mean, that's to me more of what I'd like to see than that Colgate ad.
Well, the one Colgate of those that did kind of anger me was when they showed Tim Drake and Wonder Girl kissing, and he's like, "Yeah, he nailed it." I'm like, no, that wasn't a happy moment. That was a very sad moment for those two, because they both felt like they were, doing cheating and or lessening the memory of Connor. That wasn't a good moment to put in there and have a guy celebrating over the kiss.
There was an attraction, though, Jim, between the two. They did have a relationship.
Well, I completely agree on that side. There was that, but if you think about when that first kiss happened, there was a lot of pain attached within that kiss and guilt within each other. You know, even though there was an attraction, there was a kind of a thing going on. You think about just the period after that first kiss, what those two both went through. There's a lot better kisses in the DC universe that they could have thrown in that place.
Jim, I think what it's showing, you're missing the point. I think what it's showing is no matter the moment, whether it's a happy, like, finally I'm going to score moment, or it's one of those, like, painful, consoling moments, you should still use Colgate, Jim. I think you're missing the point here, Jim. Colgate is a multi-use toothpaste. It's not just for the good times, it's for the bad times, too. So, you know, just keep in mind, Jim, no matter what mood you're in, you need to use Colgate. I mean,
Thank you. I started getting way into that. Thank you for calling me out. Oh, man. Holy geek out moments, Batman.
I mean, I'm just saying, use Colgate, Jim. You know, speaking of different kinds of ads that appear in comics at times, what do you think of these like at the end of the issue, these previews? Do they get it? Like, I mean, are any of the ones like the Green Arrow one, for example? I'll say one of the highlights of the Green Arrow one is I think the art stepped up a bit because it's the same art team that we've seen. I think the art's stepping up a bit for the solo series that's upcoming. I'm a little excited for this, this idea that he is going to be like the Robin Hood and Sherwood Forest kind of character now, where he is going to be hiding out in Star City, helping the little man. And, you know, especially after all that Star City's been through, Green Arrow couldn't leave. He now has to really become this underground hero that the city needs at this moment. And I'm looking forward to seeing this book even more. I don't know if you felt the same way. I do feel that the art has improved from what I've already seen, offering-wise.
Yeah, as a general statement on the stories and those backup stories, those sneak peeks, I love those. I really do. Those have really helped sell me on a lot of comics in the past, and I got to echo sentiment on Green Arrow. That really got me jazzed for the Green Arrow series. I was going to get it no matter what. There wasn't any question whether I'd give it a shot and give it a read through because I was curious to see what they did, but that got me excited about it again. You know, there was okay, I'll check it out. Then I read that, like, ooh, this is going to be neat. And same thing with that art style. That is just a really nice looking piece of artwork. Looking forward to seeing where this goes and where this all fleshes out. So yeah, those as a general concept, I love those things. As a specific concept towards the Green Arrow, definitely think that's a neat little kind of, you know, teaser, kind of, just a little taste of what's to come.
Was it just me, or did you feel like the art had stepped up its game since the issues that we've seen already with this art team? Because this is the same art team that we saw in those last couple of issues, like where the old series was ending off.
See, I wouldn't say step up the game. I would say it's getting comfortable with. It's like it's being itself. Whereas before they were trying to transition art type of deal, where they were trying to keep things not so jarring for the people who have been reading. I think this is, boom, their art style. This is what they say. This is our take on the character. This is how we want this universe to look. And that's why it has a feeling of that it's stepped up, but it's really just, boom, this is who they are. I think before they were a little held, they held back a little bit maybe, or they adjusted how they wanted it to look so it would fit better with what we've seen.
I love your explanation that it has a feeling like it's stepped up, but boom, this is who we are. That was great.
You know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I get it. I love hearing your explanations of. I'm not mocking you at all. It's honestly just the opposite. I'm thoroughly enthralled by what you're saying. It's funny for me sometimes because you and I do see things differently, and I love hearing I'm like, okay, he's basically seeing things the same way I am. It's his own perspective on it. It's kind of cool. What do you think of this Batman: The Odyssey?
I'm curious. I'm really curious to see what this is. This is one of those things where these sneak peeks have piqued my curiosity.
I want my caution is the whole bat with the gun, but I'm like, is that Bruce? I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily agree that that's what's going on there because the costume doesn't look like it fits right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that there is something to the story with this whole thing. But one thing I love about it is the artwork. Neil Adams is just a master, and I could literally look at him drawing any characters. I bought his Monsters book at the New York Comic Con the one year. It was just, him doing monster artwork. And it's just, he's somebody who just seeing him do a 6-issue, it's going to be a 6-issue, then a 6-issue, I think is how it's working. He's doing the initial 6, and then there's going to be another 6 as a follow-up. I like these minis that they're doing in this fashion. Like, give the creative team, because we're seeing this right now with the Kevin Smith, the Widening Gyre, or Widening Gyre, whatever it is. I'm so messed up on the name of that one. I've got Gyre so mixed into my head right now that I can't let that go. But I like this idea that the team did this first initial 6-issue arc. It's going to take a break. And then they're going to come back and hit you again with the second part of it. It's very film-like in the presentation in the sense that you're getting one film, then you're getting the sequel film. And that works for me. I mean, that's, it's to me, if you've got a creative team where you're like, we want to keep them on time, we want to do something special, let's get some issues in the can. Let's, because already the one issue's a little delayed. So it's a good move with this creative team to say, hey, you know what? It's obviously schedule-wise, this is the best way to handle it with this team. And I think they need to be more aggressive on doing that when they have special teams come onto a book, because I think it works. That series is one that I've thoroughly enjoyed, following Bruce with Silver St. Cloud and just seeing that kind of revisiting of certain characters that I've really loved in the past. And I'm looking forward to seeing Batman the Odyssey for the same reason. I'm glad they're doing more of these Batman specialty miniseries again that really kind of spotlight different kinds of Batman storytelling. He's a character that lends himself to this. Are there any characters outside of Batman that you'd like to see them do this with? Because these are clearly series that are outside of continuity. Is there anybody that you're like, boy, I'd like to see somebody do their own classic version of this character? These types of stories that could be in continuity but don't necessarily have to be. You know what I mean? Where they kind of echo continuity, if that makes sense.
Off the top of my head, I would say the Green Boys. Green Arrow and Green Lantern. Do something that's just outside of the current story arc. Maybe go back, to an earlier version of Ollie and him, the early days, or even do another Green Lantern type of deal where it's not Hal, it's not any of the three, it's somebody else, not in the Green Lantern Corps, but just outside of it kind of deal. Because I think the Green Lantern character, just the nature of the Green Lantern power, I think is a very interesting thing. And seeing somebody else wielding it, how they deal with it, how they create stuff would just lend to a really neat story. And same thing with Ollie, that this character has been through so many different periods of his life where he's had the happy-go-lucky Robin Hood looking to the little bit darker, little bit nasty, thing going on where he's the hunter, he's the killer, then he has the hero moments, and there's just a lot to who is Ollie Queen that he would definitely open himself up to some neat stories.
You know what group of three I'd love to see together? Hawkman, Barry Allen Flash, and Green Arrow. In one, for whatever reason, having one story where they're together for a big arc. Just to kind of see how those three, because you know what, Hawkman and Green Arrow are like. You know what Barry and Green Arrow are like. I'd love to see Hawkman and Flash. I just have a funny feeling those three together, they would accomplish their goal, but I think it would be so entertaining because they so would rub each other the wrong way. I think ultimately they do see the value in each other, and I'm not ultimately. I know we know that they see the value in each other as heroes to a certain extent, and I'm talking about considering the events that they've currently been through. So Barry with Ollie now, Hawkman with them now, with everything that's going on, how would they all react? And would Hawkman? It would be interesting to see. Would Hawkman see Ollie's side a little more now with what he's doing? Because you can't help but wonder if maybe he wouldn't get Ollie a little bit more considering those events. I just think it'd be neat because there's been such a history of Green Arrow with those two characters, especially with them not having such a great relationship with him. I would like to see more with Barry and Ollie. I would like to see, even if it's not Hawkman, but I'm particularly throwing Hawkman to the mix because of the fact that we've seen that kind of tumultuous history between the two of them. I would love to see the same thing with Barry Allen and Ollie. I would love to see a follow-up to, because he was really out for blood with Green Arrow when all that went down, and really felt that this was validation of his concerns about Green Arrow coming back. So I'd love to see a follow-up story with them. I know we're going to get it eventually. I'd love to see that spotlighted in a mini, though, if they don't have plans for it elsewhere.
Speaking of Hawkman, the person I would like to see Hawkman kind of team up with, Arsenal and/or Red Arrow. Once everything with Roy is settled and his world is at a place where he is somebody, I would like to see Hawkman and him, just because of the obvious. They've both had things going on with but it's that whole question nature of, who did Roy actually have his thing with? Is it the current, incarnation out there? No, but is it? And kind of deal where those two.
You want Shayera involved in that, obviously.
Well, she's going to be involved with it, just by nature of having Hawkman. Yeah. But I think it would be cool seeing those two either working together for some reason, maybe, and have her. I wouldn't put her in the actual series, just because she would be the calming influence, and I wouldn't want that calming influence, in there. She would be more of a diplomat between the two of them. I'd like to see those two working together without that little kind of element to keep things on the even keel and keep things actually going forward. Just seeing how they deal with it, because you look at just what Roy is going through and what he's going to go through before everything is said and done. When it's over, he's going to be a completely different person, dealing with Hawkman, who could possibly have issues with him, who may not have issues with him. Who knows how that's going to happen? I think that would be an interesting story to play out.
I want some validation as far as what has gone on with Kendra/Shayera. Because here's the problem. Kendra died, right? Mm-hmm. Shayera returned from that same host. Because remember, it was the Black Lantern body. They took a hold of Kendra's body. Yeah. So when she returned, that was Shayera returning in that body. I want some explanation as far as what happened there. Where is Kendra? It's something we've talked about on the show before. To me, it seems to be validation that Kendra and Shayera are one and the same. That Kendra was a life of Shayera's. That does, in many ways, conflict with what we've seen in the past with Kendra, but maybe now we're just going to get a definite explanation as far as what that is and what actually happened. I don't know. I'm very curious to see how that is going to play out. I just want some clarification as far as what did happen to Kendra.
Yeah, where is she? And
to me, Arsenal, I amen with you that Arsenal's the way to do that, because I would love to see an epilogue with them on some level, because there is a relationship. If Kendra's in there, if those memories and those feelings of Kendra's are in there, then being that she moved on from Roy already prior to that anyway, there would still be feelings for Lian, though. Mm-hmm. And what happened. And Roy, in the sense that, former lover, things like that. So there is an attachment and memories there. And I would like to see it addressed on some level, her feelings about Lian's death, if that is a part of her. Or we'll get some firm validation that Kendra is not a part of Shayera. And she will approach it from a different avenue, in the sense that, for the sake of a colleague, she has those feelings. I just want some validation there. And I have a funny feeling with the focus on the Hawks in Brightest Day that we're going to get some of that. Actually, in our next segment in a few minutes, let's talk a little bit. Well, actually, you want to just jump to it, talk real quick about Brightest Day, and we'll wrap up there?
Okay.
Seeing as we're already talking about Brightest Day, because I think we're kind of be remiss not to talk about Brightest Day, and then we can save the rest of the books we want to talk about for the next time we do this.
Cool.
Okay, Brightest Day number 2 came out, and I wanted to wait to talk about this until we could schedule something with Myron Rumsey, but our schedule's been so hectic lately. I promise we'll get Myron on in a future show to talk more about the Brightest Day event as a whole. Hawkman and Hawkgirl going after Heth-Set. The creep factor of the death masks, I'm genuinely worried for them, because I'm like, is there a target on them? Is everyone who's returned out of the 12 going to survive all of this? I don't know, and we're going to have to talk, I think, a little bit about the most recent issue of Green Lantern in some of this discussion, because I don't know how we can't, because it's kind of this White Lantern concept and is all coming together, because the 12 are brought up in Green Lantern in the most recent issue. So I don't know how we can't talk about that in this mix. But the dead man in this white ring, the entity talking to him, who is the entity talking to him? Is it that white entity that took over Sinestro? That merged with Sinestro that we saw? Not took over, that's sort of a strong word, but then merged with Sinestro. Is that who's talking to Deadman? Is that what you're taking it, Jim?
That's completely how I'm taking it. That's because You think about it, you look at what Deadman is and what he's doing. He's jumping between the different people and things that were affected by the event. And he is seeing the 12, and he's seeing the 12 for not only who they are, but what the potential problem is. Like, he was one of the first ones to start noticing with Aquaman how he's, he looks a little bit different. He looks a little bit off. And just how issue 2 ended with he has to fight. Well, who do I fight? Oh, crud, the Anti-Monitor. Boom. Kind of deal where he is going around. He's seeing all the different stuff. He's definitely connected to that force, that entity. And it's, I don't know, trying to figure out what he's going to do with it. Can he actually manipulate it? Can he use it? Because you think about it, in Blackest Night events, Hal described it kind of like as it's a ship. It needs a pilot. Is that who Deadman's going to be? Is he going to be the one who can fuse with the entity, who can do stuff with the entity and make it actually act and happen? And I don't know. That's something I really like about the mystery, that each one of these characters has a little bit something more going on.
Help me be alive. That's a theme we see in the most recent issue of Green Lantern, especially when you look at Aquaman. Aquaman, we've probably seen the most clearly the realization that his issues with speaking with only dead sea life might be a clue that all of the returning have some form of issue to overcome. Like, we haven't seen it all yet. Like, we saw with Hawkman and Hawkgirl that their original bodies are now around. What is this going to enable Hathset to do with them? What does this mean for them in their future? Stuff that's going on with Martian Manhunter. We're seeing memories with him. He's learning that the scientist that brought him to Earth had a daughter. And it's cool to see this more accessible John Jones returning. I was enjoying him before his death, but there's like this welcome resurrection here. But they all seem to have these mysteries coming out of this whole thing. And Firestorm, you have to talk about Firestorm. The Firestorm matrix itself seems to be a living, I don't know if entity is the right word. It's alive on some level. Because what is the black tentacled thing in the middle? Is that part of the Black Lantern? Is it part of the blackness from that? Is it the aftermath of the dead Firestorm Matrix in there? I don't know. But there's something in there, and that's what's keeping them fused together. Is that how you're taking that?
Yeah, it's the nature of it has changed, and you can't separate the way you separated before. I think what they're going to need to do is those two are going to have to look in deep and explore and figure out some way. I don't want to sound like too cheesy, but I think it's going to be those two are going to have to get together, and those two are going to actually work together and make the breakdown possible. They're looking right now to outside sources. Hey, fix us. No. Somebody else can't fix you. You have to fix yourself. And I think each one of, so far we've seen these dead characters come back, each one of them has this little darkness inside them. And the nature of who they are, that they have to confront it, they have to make the change. I think we're going to see Aquaman's going to have to look into and figure out what and who he is before he's able to actually come completely out and come into the light. And it's that kind of deal going on with all of them.
Jason is trapped as the second half of Firestorm right now, and only Ronnie can hear him. What would you do? Wouldn't that be claustrophobic? I mean, he really is not only trapped inside there, but his only form of communication is Ronnie, who he doesn't want to talk to at all. Talk about this feeling of darkness and being alone, and you can't get out of there.
Yeah, I would start singing I'm Henry VIII I Am, just to annoy him. You just keep singing that over and over and over again. Eventually, he'll drive Ronnie crazy.
Yeah, but even then, there comes a point where, there's only so many times you can sing 99 bottles of beer on the wall before even you're going to give up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Going off of that you're going to be super annoying, what's to keep Jason from cracking? Or are we going to see some of that? I don't know. Because, before they could really unfuse as needed, to stretch your legs, so to speak. Mm-hmm. He can't take a recess.
If you have you seen the Heroes? Gone through the ending and all that. The TV show Heroes.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, the one episode where it was Sylar and Peter,
yeah,
trapped in Sylar's mind, And it was a 5-year period where those two just had to work their things out before they could finally get out. That's the kind of thing I see happening with those two. They have issues. They have to work things out. They have to, deal with what is sitting there right now. The 50-pound, 500-pound gorilla sitting right in front of them. That they have to deal with that thing before anything else happens. And I think that's the path we're going to go with. I was joking around, obviously, when I said start singing, Henry VIII I am, but there is something where those two are going to have an open and honest, completely communication. And I think that's what's locking them together, that there is some unresolved issue kind of deal. You hear about like stuff with ghosts and things like that where they stick around because they have some unresolved issue going on Earth. I'm thinking maybe if we're dealing with the dead coming back, that could very easily be a connection. There's some unresolved thing. Going back to you think about with Hawkman and Hawkwoman, with their thing with Hath said about the curse and the recurring and just all that, maybe we're going to finally see an end to that whole story arc, an end to that whole piece of them. If, say, for example, if Hawkman can never do the resurrection again, if you had to give up the possibility that if you die, you're going to come back, but it means you would have a chance at having that one life with someone you love, would you go ahead and do it? Maybe that's the way to defeat Hath Set, is by ending and breaking that curse. Yes, you're giving up the chance for coming back, but now you and Hawkwoman can have that life, can have that love going on. I think that's the kind of deal that each of these characters are going to have to deal with. I'm really curious about guys, about their villain side. What do they have to deal with? Max Lord, with Captain Boomerang, with Zoom. What's going to happen with them? What kind of, are there going to be any little, twists and turns and dealings that they have to deal with?
I see. The funny part was, and I'm curious to see if they talk about this at all, Hathset was technically resolved in the Hawkgirl book. Like, they put an end to that. The curse was supposedly over. So I'm guessing what they thought they ended in that series didn't end it at all. Or the fact that they've resurrected through the Blackest Night has rebooted the curse, restarted the curse, so to speak, because the fact that they are back and they are alive, and that Shayera's back now specifically, if it's rebooted the curse. I don't know. It's going to be curious to see what happens through all that. The Matrix, the Firestorm Matrix, one more thing is, it's really flammable now. And what does that unique difference mean? I don't know what that means. Who is, to me, is it the entity in there saying, help me to live? And is there something more to the entity than we realize? Is there somebody in there that we don't realize? Who's calling out to him? I don't know. Does it have anything to do with the Anti-Monitor? I don't know. This is all, it's all to me so interesting. Is somehow the Monitor tied into that? I don't know. It's
that could be the Monitor talking. I don't know.
Yeah. Did he become the entity at some point? I don't know.
They said very plain as day at the different panels and the different discussions that the people who came back for a reason, but also this is it. These are the only people who came back. We're not going to see later on, oh, guess what, so-and-so also came back. So I don't know, when you talk about this entity, when we talk about this life force, I don't know if it can only be what we've already seen. That's the only way it could be. I don't think there's anybody else out there that it could be, because they said they're not bringing back any other new people.
But if you make the argument that the entity's already back, then they're not really bringing back somebody new. It's just identifying what the entity is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, that's what I'm saying. You're saying, though, I don't know if the entity could be somebody else out there or something like that. Technically, the entity being back by its nature, if it is somebody from the past, we've already seen the entity, so they're not really breaking that rule.
Oh, okay.
If you follow me.
Actually, now I understand what you're saying. Because at first I'm like, wait, hold on. But, okay, yeah, I see. We're not technically bringing somebody else new. If this was the person all along, right. We're just explaining who that person was.
Although, and I could be, the entity could, and I might be digging too much into that as well, and I'll fully admit that. Because I'm only speculating. I'm not 100% sold that the entity actually is somebody we know. The entity might just plain out be the white entity, and that, the one that we've seen in Such Is Life, and that's it. But similar to Necron being the entity for the darkness, I can't help but wonder if there isn't somebody that we haven't seen yet that's an entity for the light. That would be a player like Necron was. Where somebody like, whoa, wait, this is somebody from DC's past, like, wow, bam. And that identification of who that character is. I'm just enjoying the ride, whatever happens here. So it's an interesting story. What do you think in the Green Lantern issue, the gathering of these heroes now, we're seeing it for them to go look for each of the specific entities. Who is that wrapped up hooded figure? Is that Scar? Is that who you took that to be?
That's who I took it to be. That was the first thought that popped in my head was Scar on that. I don't know, seeing the chains that is underneath it, because you kind of see some, one of the art scenes, you saw some chains and looked maybe like those, like shackled to the wrists or shackled to where the arms would be kind of deal. That got me thinking, could it be a defeated Necron? So he's a lot smaller and a lot, kind of like you take the wind out of him, so it's like he's shrunk down a little bit maybe. But my first thought was Scar.
You just want a baby Necron action figure.
Yes. Kind of like Jawa-sized Necron.
Yeah, it'd be great little Necron. Put him next to your big Necron.
Yeah.
I didn't take it. That's interesting. I don't know. I'm very curious to see who the reveal, or could it be a different Guardian that somehow was altered due to this whole event? I don't know. I'm very curious to see what's going to. I'm pretty convinced that that's a Guardian of some sort. If it's not Scar, but I might be wrong. That was the mystery that I was very interested to see who that was. Captured 2 of the entities now? Is that how we took it?
Yeah. Well, they got Ion now, and they have the
Parallax, right?
Parallax.
Right, because we saw that initially, Parallax being taken. So now we know that these entities are being collected. What happens if this being gets all of them? And that's, I think, the twist right here is that they need to get the entities so that this person doesn't. Is that what you're taking this as?
Yeah, that's how I'm taking. I'm taking it that if the kind of shrouded, in darkness character gets all the entities, it's going to be bad things for everybody. And that's the big mission, and that's the big thing that this special ops team is going after.
It's a good story. I'm really liking it so far, spinning out of it. I like that we get to see. I like to see a little bit of a furthering, and Sinestro noting the growing relationship between Carol and Hal. But his own thing that his kind of bluntness of the relationship that's ultimately doomed to failure, because Sinestro doesn't pull any punches at all, and certainly wouldn't be, with his own romantic history, wouldn't be. So happy about anybody else having a good day, so to speak. So that was, I found that a nice little chuckle. Atrocitus' cat.
Yes.
I think we have to talk a little bit about that cat, because that to me was probably one of my favorite chuckle moments this month. Although there were so many good ones. We'll have to talk about. We're definitely going to talk Secret Six next episode to talk about some chuckle moments. But that cat was, I didn't expect that. As an angry cat.
Yeah, that's one mad cat there.
Did we see the cat before anywhere? I don't remember seeing the cat.
I think I remember seeing the cat in some of the fight sequences.
Okay. So
I'm pretty sure I remember seeing the cat, because I know there's talk about Crypto fighting somebody. And I can't remember if Crypto was supposed to fight a Yellow Lantern or a Red Lantern.
I thought it was tied with Atrocitus.
Yeah, I think it was Crypto supposed to fight that cat. And I think we've been promised that fight's going to still happen. So,
well, the cat was
curious.
The cat was to me kind of a dead giveaway. Who would you put Crypto against? One angry cat.
I could have swore though that there's a Yellow Lantern cat out there.
I don't remember there being a Yellow Lantern cat. Although I got to admit that a lot of my focus has been on some of the main players. So there was a lot of red, blue, green, purple, Yellow Lanterns that I wasn't like. If you put their picture on the screen, I would remember seeing them. If it was in a panel here, a panel there, or something like that, I'd like, oh, I remember seeing that one before. The cat, I don't remember. So I'm going to go look back in other issues because I just want to see, was this the cat's first appearance, or what was the origin of the cat? That's interesting. Atrocitus can make constructs now, which was something new.
That was definitely kind of interesting. I like seeing that it was Mira, that he made as a construct. Definitely, he's got something going on there, and I don't know if you can say it's a love or if it's something else that is just kind of like a freaky deaky version of what Atrocitus is.
Well, at the very least, an intense respect for what she brought to the table as a Red Lantern, because she was very formidable in that role. So if it's not love in the romantic sense, there's definitely an appreciation of that this person was a very formidable ally and something that he might want to go after again in the future. So whether there is a romance there, there is definitely an appreciation. I could see it being both. You know, both explanations or something in the middle. I don't know. Be curious to see what that is and what happens there. It's been a very cool follow-up to all this. I love that Blackest Night didn't just end, that the events there have led to further storytelling. Because that, to me, the landmark to an event is that you feel like the story, yes, it ended, but then that there's residue, aftermath, tendrils that kind of branch out from it, and you get some cool stories outside of it. That, to me, it's a universe-shaking event. You should feel the ripples beyond, and we're seeing so much of that right now. It's caused so many heroes to regroup and reform and reimagine themselves and get to their core and their roots of who they are. And it really brought about some major changes in the landscape of the DC universes where the heroes overall seem a lot more confident for who they are as individuals. And it's been, it came at a right time where I feel like I'm very excited for storytelling right now, across the line. I think it's very interesting to see what's going on there. Do you have time to talk War of the Supermen real quick?
Sure.
I know we're getting close to dinner time for you. I didn't want to, but I think we'd be remiss not to talk about it at least a little bit. This 4-issue event, it was 4 weeks. There were no Superman books other than War of the Supermen. This war escalates. Zod attacks the Earth base on Mars to take out the defensive force there. Major deaths occur quickly. While Superman is away, there's this planned attack on Earth. We learned that Lex made this deal with Lane, not only for pardon, but for Luthor Corps, and the exchange was for tech to turn our sun into a red sun. And we got to see, how will the Kryptonians survive? And we got to see this whole event where we got to see Flamebird sacrifice herself. And Nightwing was not allowed to partake. He was pulled away from that. He wanted to go with Flamebird. He wanted to die with her. The love, kind of extinguishing together that at that point. And it was interesting to see, was that Chris driving that? Because I do see Chris as being selfless enough that he could have gone with her. He was willing, that the love was not just the Nightwing entity. It was also the Flamebird. But we do see, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, we do see when this poor kid's in the Phantom Zone at the end, that with the entity gone from him now, having fulfilled its quest, that he's losing the memory of that relationship, gradually losing the feelings that I guess went along with it as well.
And I took it, actually, it was also part of the Phantom Zone does that to you, because he had that, with him and Mon together, and he's like, it's the Phantom Zone kind of does that to you, and you got to hold on to it, kind of deal. Where I think, part of it is, Flamebird entity, part of it was him, part of it was Nightwing, and just that whole connection. But there was the real emotions, the real feelings he had, and that's the stuff that he's holding on to. That's the stuff he can hold on to. It's like part of his memories, part of his feelings and all that are going to fade away because the entity, it was that, but he had the real stuff in himself, and that's what he's holding on to. It's kind of how I took it, as well as just the nature of the Phantom Zone kind of takes away stuff from you.
It does explain why characters like Zod and Mon-El, it's an interesting tool to explain why they've come out of the Phantom Zone multiple times, why they don't have memories of these various events, especially Mon-El, who so prominently has been featured in the Legion of Superheroes as a major member throughout the years. Why didn't he know any of this? Well, this is a nice, nifty way to say the Phantom Zone did this to him, And I'm a fan of simple techniques like that to explain that, yes, Mon-El's stories all happened, and he did go back into the Phantom Zone, and these things all happened, and he was there with, Chris throughout all this. There was a Mon-El in there, and all of the stories you did see did happen. It's just because the Phantom Zone plays with your head, that's what happens. I am curious to see with Mon-El when the Legion returns to the future Earth, because they took Mon-El with them, right? To the future? Well,
Mon-El got to the future through the Phantom Zone. Mon-El didn't. When the team went back, Mon-El stayed because he laid the final pieces down. He sent the female, the the female Daxam,
That's right.
Daxamite into the spaceship. He did all that stuff present day, and then at the last minute was put back into the Phantom Zone before he died.
Okay, so that's how he was in the Phantom Zone with Chris.
You're right.
Because I got lost in there somewhere I'm like, where is Mon-El now? All right, now I understand. So Mon-El actually, after, he didn't go back with the Legion hit squad.
No, he
Good.
stayed.
That ties up for Legion history then, that he is back in the Phantom Zone, which leads to how he originally came with the Legion, was they pulled him out of the Phantom Zone in the future. So that all is tied up into a nice, neat bow, and events are in place. And that's why he wouldn't have remembered when they pulled him out, some of these events were because they would drift into the other, when he's in the Phantom Zone. He wouldn't remember everything. So that's cool. What were some of your favorite moments from War of the Supermen? We saw a lot happen with General Lane and with Zod and the whole battle for Earth. There aren't many. If there's Kryptonians left, there aren't many of them, and they're in hiding.
I gotta give the victory to Lane on this one. The actual 100-minute war that actually played out. I gotta say, Lane did a better job than Zod did. And I'm surprised actually saying that, because I always have liked Zod, but Zod really let his personal feelings get in the way. Lane set up a beautiful battle plan from beginning to end. His espionage units infiltrated Kryptonian culture, damaged and did some messing with their heads, and then in the end, it was his espionage units that destroyed New Krypton. Plus, he had that great plan. He had Brainiac play him against him, soften him up, killed off a lot of Kryptonians that way, and then in the end, he turns the sun red. But he waits until they're flying in space to do so. That right there took out a large chunk of the Kryptonian forces just by their flying, coming in. Oh, can't fly, can't breathe, you're dead. Done. Game over. Add to it just the cachet of kryptonite weapons, some magic weapons, just a team and a strike forces that were ready, willing, and able to use the weapons they had. This was a great military planning on Lane's part. Granted, I am saying this as he is a war criminal, and I loved his ending and how everything played out with up to his death. I thought that was a really, just a great way for him to get taken down, because it was, in effect, Lois Lane who took down General Lane, where she started just laying it out, saying, you were worried about this alien coming in and destroying the planet. Well, you were the hostile alien that invaded their world and destroyed them. You did exactly what you were going to do, and it's right then and there that you see all of the war crimes that Lane has committed. Everything laid out very simply, genocide. He violated the U.S. military code of conduct repeatedly. There is just so much stuff that there's not a politician out there who would have given him any support, strength, or protection. And so he's like, well, only one way to go, no prisoners. Bam! I was just like, wow. It was one of those moments that I put down the book going, oh my God, I can't believe they just did that. I really, really just ate up just the usage of Lane throughout this whole thing.
I'm curious to see Superwoman post all this and what her feelings are going to be. Because, she knows what her father was like at the end. Because she overheard all that, right?
Here's my opinion. Lucy is going to block that all out. She's not going to see her father as anything other than the brave general who tried to save his planet from the evil Kryptonians. She is so desperate for his love and approval that she's going to overlook the truth and look at him in the rose-colored glasses. So I see the Superwoman, Supergirl fight is not over. Granted, Supergirl took her down hard and fast, and I kind of like that. The fact that, with all of Supergirl's experience, she is used to these powers. She is used to this. She is a hard-hitting hero. She knows what to do, so naturally she would take down Superwoman without any issue. But I do want to see that fight. I do want to see these two throw down again. And I think we're going to end the Supergirl title. Maybe not now, but maybe in the future, because there's no way Lucy has accepted how and why General Lane has died.
She also wasn't alone, Supergirl. Like when she took down Superwoman, she was with a whole squad. It was all of our heroes that we saw that were banded together at that point, including Superboy, Steel. They were all there together. What did you think about the Guardian basically leaving at this point?
Here's the thing. I loved the whole thing with Guardian sitting there, he's got the assassin down, and what's he do? He arrests him. He doesn't go for the vengeance. He doesn't go for the thing. He is in itself. He is a cop. This is what he does. He brings the bad guys to justice, and he did that with the assassin. I thought that was a really cool moment where he reads him his rights. He arrests him right there. And then when he left, I was like, it was a cool, sad moment. It was cool that I was glad that I figured if there's not a writer who had a solid story that they wanted to do with Guardian, that they gave him this ending. He's going off with, his kid. He's going off with, his niece. He's going to find who he is, kind of in a deal. Just, he's going for a normal, quote-unquote, normal life. I thought that was a nice kind of giving him a nice ending instead of having the character drift in and out of different stories because someone doesn't have a set, I want to do this with him. They gave him this, I want to say, put him at rest, put him at ease. It's, he's got his moment. He went there, to find the killer. He found the killer. Killer's brought to justice. It's time now to live a normal life with, his family. And I thought that was a nice way for him to go out.
Billy's pregnant.
Yes.
With Mon-El's kid. I mean, that's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out. I'm hoping I'm sure we're going to get some kind of story out of that. I'm a little worried about the kid. Because that doesn't always turn out well.
Well, we're talking half Daxam, half human.
Right.
So hopefully the whole lead thing...
Well, hold on. But take a look at Mon-El's own history from the annual.
Right.
So it's... You got to remember, Mon-El's got a mixed history as well. If you take a look at who he is, because he was that kid that he's a child of Krypton, Daxam, and Earth through his own birth.
Right.
So Mon-El actually has that part of him that is from Earth as well. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with all that. I hope we do get some storytelling with that's used somewhere.
Well, I'm hoping that this means the kid won't have the lead, weakness, the lead poisoning kind of deal. Just because that would stink just for the family. Because, it's been proven that a Daxamite cannot live in Earth because there's so much just general lead in the air. So what's going to happen to this kid if the kid's born, and where is that going to take it? And I do wonder, are we going to see this story, or is this something that's going to play out? It's just thrown out there. Maybe a couple of years down the line, someone goes, let me use this story now. I don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to, if this is done, or if this is set up for the future.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. I hope we do get more with it. I hope we see Chris again in the future. Now that we've got him in the Phantom Zone, they put him in a unique spot where we could use the character again if necessary. Clark was going to give up his life to be Zod's jailer.
That's a classic Clark thing, just the sacrificing himself. And I thought that was a neat way, because even Zod's like, go ahead, lock me in the Phantom Zone. I got out, I'll get out again, and I will come and I will hunt you down. And I just I'm sitting there reading it going, yeah, he will. But sure enough, Clark's like, no, not this time. Bam. I knew something would happen, that he would come out. Because, come on, they're not going to lock, Superman in the Phantom Zone. And I like the fact that it was Chris doing it. And not only Chris, but he stepped up saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is how we're going to keep them locked in. And it's telling a nice story. It's they really took a lot of these pieces. They finished them up, they wrapped them, and just locked them in place. I think this was a great story that lived up to the hype. I really think, this is one of those, I was like, yes, this is getting me energized, really super to see Superman come back. I'm curious to see how they're going to play off with how long Clark has been gone. Are they going to even mention it? Are they just going to go right into the flow? What's going to be the relationship between, Lois and the various people that have been in her life? Are we going to see a return to Lana and Supergirl? Where's this going to go? There's a lot of stories that have, it solved and closed a lot of things, but it left it open to continue on into the next story, because there's definitely going to be repercussions that come off of this. And I'm really curious and really just gung-ho to see where this goes. This is something that It's an ending of a story. It's like we talked about with Blackest Night. It's an ending of a significant major event, but it's really just the beginning of the next chapter, the next phase of the story. And there's more to come. And I'm just like, yes.
I love the closing with Clark and Lois. Really important to me to see those two connected again because they've been apart for so long. And, you know, for anybody that says that marriages don't work in comics, I don't want to see every hero married. I don't think that. I think that would become as weak as, you know, not having anybody married. I think there's something unique about these two characters being married, though, and making it work, in that you have this moment with a husband and a wife together. What are you going to do, Lois? I'm going to tell the truth. This is what I'm going to tell about my father. My father-in-law once told me that the only constant in life is change. Change affects us all in different ways, and sometimes we lose sight of what's important. Sometimes we can't let go of the old ways of life. One Kryptonian came to Earth and helped make it a better place. We made him our greatest hero. 100,000 Kryptonians came, and they were seen as a threat. They were met with suspicion, hatred, and eventually death. We, humanity, were incapable of accepting what they had to offer. Accepting that change, so we lashed out at them, destroyed them. Someday I hope humankind will be more receptive to change, to living as a melting pot of people and cultures, to set aside suspicions and to live together peacefully. Sometimes that seems like an impossible goal. For now, though, all we can do is hold on to that hope and let the dream for a better world sustain us. And it was a good ending to see, because you see Lois flying off with a very determined Superman into the sunset. And it was kind of a great closure to see the two of them back together again, and to see what the strength of their relationship is and how there's a respect, you know, where Clark needs to kind of disseminate information with Lois after all this was done. I was glad at the way this kind of tied everything. It's something, and I'm going to talk definitely in our next episode about Wonder Woman number 44. I think what's great about this and how it ended, I agree with you, Jim, in the sense that there is room to tell stories spinning out of this as far as the aftermaths, but they tied everything up so nicely that they left all the toys in a really strong place that the next creative teams coming on can really start anew. There's new stories, new things to be told. They don't have to be tied to any of this because they tied up everything and left room for those things to be used later if necessary. But there's nothing that has to be done immediately about any of this story. It's been wrapped up in a nice little bow that they can take the new status quo, them flying off into the sunset, and do this. Wonder Woman 44 did this as well, and we're definitely going to talk about this next episode, so I'm not going to go crazy on this either. I think it's, to me, some of my favorite writers. What makes them my favorite writers is when they're done with a run, this is clearly the ending of one run and the beginning of a new run. They tie things up so nicely, not just for the writer coming on, which is extremely important, but also they tie things up nicely for the readers. So there's nothing jarring about the fact that we can, from beginning to end, we can read their storyline and their arc and their, you know, run on a series and go, wow, this was very, very satisfying. Everything was tied up neatly. There's all the supporting cast that we grew used to, that you were playing around with. All those toys have been tied up nicely that the next writer can use any of them if they want to, but they don't need to because we've had a very satisfying conclusion to all of those little tidbits that you were doing. This was something that was handled here, I thought, very well in War of the Supermen. I thought this 4-issue series did a really nice job of tying up everything that came before, left the books in a very nice place that Paul Cornell and JMS can pull whatever they want to, and Sterling Gates as well, obviously, can pull anything that they want to into their books, and they can also leave any of that they want to behind and leave some writer in the future to deal with them if they'd like to. That, to me, is a professional. It's something that happened in Wonder Woman as well that I thought was worth talking about really quick. I think that, to me, is just a hats off to them for doing that, because it's very satisfying for me as a reader to have read this conclusion and feel like they tied this up nicely, and it's going to be good for people who are jumping on board, like maybe who stayed away from the Superman books because Clark wasn't in his book. They are going to have a nice professional start. It's professional. It's a nice professional start to the next run. It's a nice jumping on point now for new readers who haven't been there previously. It works on all levels for those of us that have been there for the whole ride and for those of us that haven't, and for the creative teams that are coming on. It's just professional. It's extremely well done. Superman books just did it. Wonder Woman books just did it. It's a passing of the baton in a way that just shows class. And I thought this was a very class month in the way that it wrapped up some story arcs. And I thought that was worth noting. And we will talk about Wonder Woman our next. We don't have enough time right now, but we will talk about Wonder Woman our next episode because I do want to talk about how that baton was handled so nicely as well. So very cool. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say or
no?
It's been great. As always, good talking to you.
Well, and to be honest, only thing I could say is just echoing and saying yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I was kidding. I
gotta give you props that you summed that up nicely because this was a good ending. This was a good beginning and good passing of the torch is definitely a very solid statement in how this was handled and what's coming forward.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
Hey, Sean and Jim, this is Fate Spears calling. I just listened to episode 205, and I've never been one to go to a top of the stack. I always savor my comics and try and get the best ones for last. And so my bottom of the stack right now is Rebels. I don't know if you guys are following along with Rebels, but it's, at post Blackest Night took a really nice turn. Every month there seems to be some good action in it. Green Lantern, of course, is another one for me. I'm loving what Jeff Johns is doing with that, and can't get enough. So my bottom of the stack would be Rebels and Green Lantern. Top of the stack, it doesn't seem to make a difference for me. So I try and hold out as long as I can on the big ones. Blackest Night was also one that I would hold off on. It's a great series and loved every second of it. So, guys, thanks for your 205-plus episodes, and looking forward to hearing a lot more from you. Bye.
I'm totally understanding the bottom of the stack thing that people are doing now, which, for me, it's always the first one. I think what it ends up happening is, at the end of or in the middle, I should say, of a crazy work week, a lot of times comics wind up being my refresher. So I always grab the ones that are going to be the most satisfying to me first, the ones that I'm most excited for first, because it's kind of on a stress day. Wednesdays and Thursdays typically end up being the stress days for me from work. I come home and I'll read those, and it revitalizes me for work, kind of reinvigorates me when I read something that I'm like, oh, yeah. So I grab the heaviest moments, the ones that I'm most excited about there. But I totally get this. And as far as Rebels go, I am so loving Rebels right now. The addition of Starfire has been fantastic, but also Adam Strange and Captain Comet, all these characters I was loving that Starlin was working with are now coming together in this book. And having Adam and Starfire back together again after what I was really enjoying with the two of them, it's great to see those characters. It's like the band's getting back together again. And that book's been fantastic all the way through. And it is one, I agree with you that post Blackest Night there is a new status quo. So it's a good one for people to jump on now, and you can get something fresh. And so if you liked it in Blackest Night, don't feel like you have to have been reading it prior to then, because they really did wrap up the whole Starro storyline, and they're going off in a new direction, which is great. So it's a very, very cool book. So thanks for sharing.
Hey, this is Daryl from the forums, and I've been meaning to catch up with you guys and call and congratulate you on making 200 episodes. 200 episodes that, seriously, from the first episode and talking about, I think Hawkman, you talked about the first episode that I ever heard, all the way up to now. I have been entertained throughout all the time that you guys have been recording. So I want to thank you both for entertaining me and getting me to try books, because now I have to go and find the Shield because I really wasn't picking up that book. And after hearing, Art Lyons and the shows you did talking about the book, I really, really have to pick it up, and I'm sorry that it got canceled. So I'm definitely going to do that. I love you guys. You are always been positive and supportive to other podcasts and just to other people in comics, just the people in general. You guys have just been great. And so I definitely hope that there will be another 200 episodes of Raging Bullets to come. And I just wish you guys the best.
Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. One of the things that I really love about podcasting has been the friendships that I've built, and you fall definitely in that category. It's funny when you talk about shouting out podcasts and doing things to promote other podcasts. It's one of those things that I wish I could do more. You know, it's because people have been so good to us with doing it, with little shout outs and references to things that have been said on our show. You know, I'll listen to other podcasts, and sometimes I'm behind on them because, you know, we're working on our show. And I'll listen to a podcast that shouted us out maybe 2 months ago or something like that with a kind word. And I'm like, geez, I wish I'd been able to, at that time, shout out that episode and say, hey, listen to this episode, because they just, you know, shouted us out. That is really the kindness of the podcasting community, is the fact that there's friendships out there, and really anybody. And this is kind of a general shout out to podcasters in general. If I don't have links to your show up on our website, or, you know, if we've never referenced your show and you're a listener or a friend or something like that, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email. If you've sent me an email before and I've forgotten to do that, you know, sometimes when I get in the busy workings of the show, please shoot me another one again. I never want to slight anybody. Or if you have a blog or anything, to me, that's what it's all about. This is a community environment. And if we're not shouting out each other, that takes the whole community aspect out of it. So thank you, Daryl, for acknowledging that, because it's really something that podcasters who've been podcasting before me were the ones. You know, I referenced Comic Geek Speak. I've referenced, you know, Ian Levinstein over at what it was Geek Speak at the time, and then Comic Timing. It's really the Round Comics guys. Everyone was kind enough to shout us out at the time. And, you know, they continue to do that. You know, there's a lot of podcasts out there. Neil Gorman was a guy, you know, who just was very, you know, Comics Podcast Network and all that at the time when that all got started. You know, he was really towards putting them together. And Derek Coward, what he's doing over at the Comic Book Noise Network. You know, he's really great about shouting out all kinds of other podcasts. And he's done a great job with us. And I'm not doing anybody justice here because I'm leaving out a ton of names. And I apologize to all of you. It's just thematically, the thoughts here is that, you know, this is a community of people. And one of the reasons why we shout out the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and if I'm missing anybody in there, please make sure to let me know, is because I want to point people to the fact that there's a lot of great podcasts out there, and there's something for everybody. So thanks a lot, pal.
Hey, Sean and Jim, this is Faith Spears calling. Just listened to your Smallville wrap-up show, and actually, I stopped it about halfway through. You guys were theorizing about what was attacking Green Arrow in the vent. I got three ideas, and you guys didn't hit any of them. One, the White Martian, as opposed to John Jones' Green Martian. Two, OMAX. OMAX, guys. OMAX. Three, could be I think they're called the Appalachians. Appalachians. They were the first aliens that the Justice League battled when they dropped together. It was in JLA Year 1, I believe. So those are just three ideas. Just thought I'd throw them out there, guys. Could be any of the three. Could be none of them. You guys could be right. It could be just somebody passing time on the weekend, banging in the vent. Great show, guys. Talk to you later.
I'm completely convinced now that it's the Parademons, and that old lady who went in there with Tess was Granny Goodness. It's funny, when Jim and I stopped watching the program, the first thing I said was Darkseid. I said, they're going to Darkseid. And, you know, I threw out the Parademons. He had me so convinced that they couldn't do Darkseid in a season that I took my mind completely off of that. But I've seen so many great forum posts with, I honestly, I've got to admit, I didn't think Parademons at first. It really was more so I was thinking of the old lady as Granny Goodness and then Darkseid. But now I've heard parademons from people and things like that, and more evidence to the old lady being Granny Goodness, that the forum people have kind of more convinced me Darkseid. Darkseid was thrown out earlier in the season by on our forum, and I apologize, I forget who did it. Somebody threw out, wouldn't it be great if they did Darkseid, or, you know, do you think they're going to do Darkseid? And that forum post really stuck with me because at the season finale I was thinking Darkseid. And so I got to admit, it wasn't, you know, something I thought off the top of my head. It really came from our forums, from listeners who were posting in there earlier in the season about the possibilities of Darkseid. And that stuck with me and resonated with me. So I'm thinking Darkseid now. But your suggestions are great. I don't pretend that I know. So that's going to be, it's interesting to see what DC thing they're going to go to next. Because I really do feel this whole Zod storyline wrapped up and that it's not going to be anything tied to what we've seen previously. I think it is going to be something new and just something to further the DC mythos in the Smallville universe. It's going to be big, whatever it is, and I'm so excited. So it's going to be very cool.
Hey, Sean and Jim, it's Nathan from New York Comic Con. I just got out of Boston Comic Con. For such a small convention, it was actually pretty good. There were Jim Lee was there. Huge fun for him, obviously. Artist on Batwoman was there, and a bunch of independent stuff was just to be expected. But it was good shopping material. $5 trades. There were trades that you could get buy one get two free. Altogether, it was just great for such a small and cheap con. Unexpectedly, there was a lot of people. That's it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
It's fun. Nathan, first of all, thanks for the phone call from the Comic-Con. When you were talking about smaller cons, that's one of the things I like about going to different styles of cons. I love going to the big whopper cons like, your New York and your Chicagos and things like that. But I also love the smaller cons because some of them are just better shopping cons. And some of them you get better FaceTime with the creators, because they're a smaller, more intimate con. But then there's the glam and glitz and the big panels and stuff like that of the larger cons. So it's a nice balance and mix. And I do encourage people, like if you've only been to one style of con, to make sure that you try to hit a few different ones because there's something from each of them that makes them fun and unique and cool to go to. But it sounds like you had a great $5 trades. That just sounds awesome. Because that really, for me, I've got such a backlog of trades, but it is because when I'm at cons, you can't help but pick those up. And you're going to get to them eventually. But so, I mean, to stock up on trades at those type of conventions, you got to do yourself a favor and do that.
Hi, Sean and Jim, and everybody else listening. My name is Fate Spears, and I started a comic book charity here in Columbus, Ohio, called Comic Book Connection Initiative. Essentially what it is I get back issues that I'm not going to read and not going to collect. The local retailers have donated a lot of comics, and give them out to kids who are in need, who could really use kind of an escape from the situation they find themselves in, maybe inspire some of them to read more, and inspire some good heroic things in some kids that could really use it. I'm on Facebook at Comic Book Connection Initiative. Big fan of the show. I've been listening to you for a couple of years, guys. Congratulations on 200, by the way, and looking forward to many more. And certainly shoot me off an email if you want at comicbookconnection@hotmail.com, or you can friend me on Facebook there, or become a fan of Comic Book Connection Initiative, and I can keep you up to date with some of the things that are going on. So again, guys, great show, and look forward to many, many more episodes with you guys. Take care. Bye.
I'll put in the show notes a direct link to the Comic Book Connection Initiative. I think that's very cool. I love that there's a lot more comic book related charities coming out there for kids, because I've got to say, nowadays we talk about what is it going to take to get kids into comics and stuff like that. It's really handing them to them, because my students literally gobble them up at work. So I do think that's really the key to, how do we want to get kids more into comics? Hand them to them. It's a great way to get them reading. It's a great way to get them reading things that are entertaining to them. And it's a great way to get them creating their own stories. And I've just seen it. I mean, kids love comics. They naturally do. They don't love all of them the same. They're as diverse from tastes as we are. But for them, it's all new. So it's a great way to do that. And I love this. It's a great charity to give things to needy kids. And I love that because it's great entertainment. It can be read over and over again. And they do lead to free ways for them to create their own form of entertainment for themselves. We all did that as kids. Those of us that have, been reading for our whole lives. If you got into comics a little bit later, perhaps you don't have this experience. But as a kid, I loved drawing and writing and creating my own comic characters. I loved even tracing covers and coloring them myself. That was just kind of fun for me to do that. So it's great. It's a great suggestion. It's a great charity idea. So there's a link right in the show notes, and that's very cool. So thanks for sharing that with us. I actually want to shout out another voicemail that we got from Nathan. He called again from the Comic-Con to tell his favorite DC Universe stories of all time. And he shouted out The Nail, which is Justice League The Nail. And if you haven't read that story, I highly recommend it. Nathan's message got a little garbled, and it probably anytime you're going to a con or in the middle of heading somewhere off of a phone, a lot of times that'll happen. And it was funny. Jim and I had to listen back to it like 4 times to get the nail part of it. I think he also referenced Superman, Batman Generations, but I'm not 100% sure, which is a John Byrne story. And Nathan, if I'm misquoting you, it's because it was hard to hear at the time. Please feel free to call back because I would love any clarification off of that. But he just gave us some well wishes on the 200th episode. And Nathan's just a wonderful guy. We met Nathan with his dad, Mike, up at one of our New York Comic-Con, actually multiple New York Comic-Con conventions now. They've become friends that we look forward to seeing whenever we're in New York. So I just wanted to give them a quick shout out.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutron!
Talking about the Speed Force, do you guys in general as fans, when you come across something that is a contradiction, do you try to resolve it? Even though you know that it's been contradicted by writers or something like that, do you try to yourself say, hey, is there a way I do? Obviously from from my comments, but I mean, that's something that I naturally try to do. Or do you just move on and it doesn't bother you? For me, I try to, even though I know that that's actually what happened, I try to see, can I find a way to make this work in my own head? Or you guys Kent, let's go ahead with you on that one. Are you just content with moving on? And there's no right or I don't think there's no right or wrong answer. It's how do you experience this?
In 40 years and more of reading comics, I have seen so many things that contradictory, that I tend to just, okay, yeah, new writer, whatever, let's go. It tends not to bother me that much. I thought it was an interesting fact to comment on, obviously, but as far as bother me, no. And spending too much time trying to think of a reconciliation. I love it when writers do that. I think that is the genius of Jeff Johns. That he is able to do that. But typically, no, it doesn't bother me, and I don't exercise myself too much in trying.
See, for me, it's kind of is ignorance is bliss. There is so much that I don't know, so when I see when these contradictions pop up, I don't catch them, so I'm like, oh, okay. But when I do catch the contradiction, or when it's something that I have read, and it's like, wait a minute, that does... It grates at my mind. I'm usually able to work through it, so I don't hold on to it too bad, but there have been some stuff that I've hung on to longer than I should, and I can honestly say it's never really made me say, oh, this is bad, because it is a difference. Now, if the same writer were to contradict something they had done previously, then I probably would have a larger issue with it. But when you're dealing with different writers, different eras, and a little bit more lenient and understanding, and I work my way through it.
I look at it this way. Do you like puzzles?
Yep.
Putting puzzles together and that type of thing?
I usually don't have the patience.
As a kid, I remember when my parents got divorced. My dad we had a big round table set up in the family room. We used to do puzzles. I remember one of them was Star Wars. It was the movie poster, the classic one, the painted one with Luke holding up the lightsaber with both hands, and Princess Leia with the little the two headphones, I guess, around her head. But it was the one where it was very gorgeously painted, where they had that flowing gown of hers and all that. Very iconic.
Was this the Brother Hildebrand poster?
Yes, and Darth Vader was kind of in the background, the head of him, like kind of a ghost image. We got the thing done, and there was a piece missing.
Oh!
And kind of like this, I'm one of those that, rather than, get frustrated with that, I took the box, I'm cutting the box to make a piece that'll fit in there. Because I just can't stand the fact that there's not something there. It's got to work for me on some level. Now, was it the perfect solution? No. But I've got to have that piece in there. That's kind of where I'm at with this type of thing. I've got to have a piece in there. So if the writers aren't going to reconcile it, I'll reconcile it myself. I will make it work. I'll take a saw to it if I've got to and fit a piece in there. It may not look like the right piece to anybody else, but as long as it looks that way for me, I'm a happy camper. This is a great example of that. And Kent, actually, you're 100% correct. It's an excellent point to bring up, because the Speed Force thing was something I had to think about, because right now I have been reading Rebirth. And when we started going through and looking at this particular book, I have been thinking about how the Flash Speed Force has changed. And yet, I took that saw to the box. And I'm having fun with this because of that. I love when writers leave it in a place where you can resolve it. Pete Geringer, the mutant here.
Yeah.
I love seeing a DC character see this blatant. One of the great things I always loved about the X-Men and mutants was you can either equate mutants with racism or with bullying or with anything, any type of human nature where people treat people poorly because they are different. And it's one of the things I've always found endearing about the X-Men. Their stories at their root. And to see the Flash, the brightest character, in my eyes, one of the brighter characters of the DC Universe, if not the brightest. In many ways, he's even, his world and his rogues and the way it all operated, especially with Wally and Barry, this whole Silver Age theme, these are characters where a lot of their villains in the Flash, Flash's villains reformed, some of them, and they had buddy relationships during this time with Wally. To see his outrage at what was happening to this kid, and just how disgusting this world is with this type of thing going on, to me, it just shows how brilliantly DC characters can interact with the Marvel Universe. That was a moment that I really thought was a powerful one in the series, because I do think this is a strength of the X-Men. To see the Flash react to it I thought it was darn cool.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And it is basically a DC character's introduction to what is one of the defining themes of the Marvel Universe, that anti-mutant hysteria.
And he got beat up out of circumstance. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time, they assumed he was one of them. Mm-hmm. And he's not a mutant.
Yeah.
So he got beat up for being a mutant, which that fits too. And how many times in the X books have you seen people get beat up for being a mutie lover? And to see that brought into all of this mob was so irrationally outraged. And that's true. That's part of human nature, where people will rally behind something and it's completely gone at that point. Any sense of rational thought is completely gone. I loved that. I ate this up. This was very well written.
The thing that I liked seeing was when the kid is initially talking to this mom, is like, you know me, I was just over your house. This isn't just some random stranger who's a drifter wandering through the town. This kid knows these people that are beating him probably to death, maybe. We don't get to see that the end game of it, but I don't think, since Wally, is pulled back to the DC Universe, there's no one there to help out that kid, and I don't think that mob's going to stop anytime soon. So that, for me, was just one of the things I really always enjoyed seeing in these X books, when the powers would first manifest, seeing these people who know this character, how they react to it, seeing how the loved ones deal with the family, and just, it was just, one of those right time. I'm glad they did it, and I'm glad they threw that into the series.
I love that this kid wakes up in the morning with a skin condition in high school. Because he's a high school football team player. And this is basically like getting a severe acne. Of course, in his case, it's like, tentacles on his head and webbed hands and stuff like that. No, really, I was over your house yesterday, much cleaner. Such a great moment. The JLA watchtower on Earth's moon. This is the Morrison era where they were up in the watchtower and operating there. Was just, it was one of those defining eras of the Justice League. There's so many of them. There's satellite eras, the watchtower era, things like that. I think it's one of the things that we're longing for right now as fans, that I'm hoping that this new era that is starting off right now, it seems to be heading back in this direction, where we're getting a Justice League that feels, and honestly, equally so on the Marvel end. It looks like we're heading towards an Avengers that's more of the heroic age on their end. We're getting this year now that's coming up where we're going to be seeing these two super teams really being the flagship teams of their respective universes again, after everything that's gone on.
I certainly hope so.
That, to me, that's what I want as well. I think that's what most of the, I think probably almost every fan is looking forward to at this point. But I love how we get to see here these glimpses of when these teams work at their best. And we get to see, very similar to what we saw in Avengers Mansion, now we're seeing in the Watchtower, they're analyzing this situation with the Skulls versus the Thanagarians. I'm going to tell you right now.
Yeah, we know who would win.
Yeah.
Come on. That's a given.
The Brood, who were, during my first years being introduced to the X-Men, one of the creepiest characters, are they an alien ripoff? Sure, but
Yeah.
there was something so cool about the Brood. And to see them with Mongol, and I loved, these are just characters that mean so much to me. That's where crossovers get cool. When you do moments like this, you can't have all these characters featured and spotlighted. So can we do this on monitors? Yes. I applaud them for doing it, because you didn't need to. You could have gotten away with just a kick-butt JLA Avengers story and made it a little bit smaller scale than they did. They didn't. This was all universe encompassing, where they tried to pull in as much and try to shove as... I'm so glad this was done in prestige format with these oversized issues, because we got so much story and so many moments that when we do see Wally come back being hurt, we get to really see that what Wally experienced and we got to see fleshed out is something that's happening in both universes all over the place. Wally's experience isn't isolated. It's a constant right now. And these worlds are in turmoil because they are interconnected right now. And they can't stay this way, or something bad is going to happen. Forget the game that's going on over them. The worlds themselves are being horribly affected right now by these events. I love that sense of fear and dread. It was something that I read in multiple read-throughs on a different level, where I wasn't as focused on the cosmic. I was more threatened, more on the street-level threats that these characters were going through. And that, to me, is a strength of this book, that you can read and focus on different things this time around and go, wow, each of the different areas and sectors of these universes are having people pop up, and they're going through horrible nightmares right now. You got to wonder who, civilian-wise, how many civilians died during this because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time when somebody popped in. And that's...
Unlucky Lotto.
Yeah, oh yeah. And that's where it gets really interesting. Then you get the voyeur of the Marvel Universe, the Watcher.
Watcher, yes.
I always liked the Watcher. Always liked him. But man, seeing him through the eyes of the Justice League, from the rage to the down creepy, he is downright creepy.
Yeah. It's funny. I did like seeing that. I'm glad when they pulled him in. I'm like, yes, I'm glad they pulled him in. I actually thought he was going to have more of a significant role in this story, because being the Watcher, he would see everything, including the creation of the universe.
Now, for once, he actually does do what he proclaims that he's going to do, just sits back and watches.
Probably trying to figure out what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Because for him, this would be, he's normally used to watching the Marvel Universe. And for now, he's in a place that's unfamiliar to him. And probably trying to put all the pieces together and seeing, and then obviously to watch and record and see how it all, because the Watcher's purpose, if I remember correctly, is to not only watch, but to chronicle, correct?
I could not tell you.
I'm almost positive that was the whole point of the watching, is that they're supposed to witness the event, at least witness the events that are going on. So in this case, he got a whole heap of stuff to witness that's brand new, that he's the one Watcher, as far as we know, the one Watcher, because there's more than one Watcher. It's a group of people. This is Uatu, I think, is his name. Please forgive me if I'm wrong there. But he would be the one Watcher watching these events. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, the Watcher does, watch and chronicle, and also trains the Slayer.
Oh.
Throw out a Buffy there.
Yeah, where's she at?
There is that, yes.
I do enjoy when I do stuff like that. I may be the only one, but hey.
No, I do. I enjoy it too. It's funny watching Plastic Man here in this one bit. Hold it, Aquaman. We have someone else approaching. I love how Plastic Man, half his head turns all the way back. Just his eyes from like his nose up. That to me is a good visual.
Oh, yeah.
It's something you don't see too often with Plastic Man, but I love when an artist gets clever to show just how bendy he really is. And it adds for a cool comedic moment. But also, yeah, wouldn't you do that if you could? Like, let me look real quick and see what's going on?
Yeah, I'd do the 360 head spin. I couldn't see, like a half. I'd do it like at the neck. Do the, okay, like that kind of deal.
What not to do on a date, though? Because that would not go over well.
Yeah, that would be a little creepy.
Yeah, big time.
Well, the fact that, look at, he has no clothing other than just that outfit. So that's on, kind of a creepiness as well. And you think about it, just the constant wearing the shades.
Well, he does wear like his E.L. O'Brien suits when he goes out on the town. He does have the alter ego.
Oh, he does have.
Yeah, I've
he
seen
dresses
that.
as Neil O'Brien. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he has. We've seen him in some variations where he is able to, because it's plastic, to alter like the goggle appearance and stuff like that, where he actually does give the appearance of
Regular faces and
Yeah.
eyes. Oh, okay. See, I don't really. He's another character. We did the one. That one trade on him, and I've seen him in appearances here and there, and I usually chuckle with him, but he's not a character I've ever really latched onto, and just said, "Oh, I want to read more of this." I don't know. He's a character. I'm like, yeah, I'll chuckle if he's in there because he can be a good comical usage, but I don't know. I'm not a plastic guy.
Oh, there's many a time on this show where you're a plastic guy.
Hey now.
Don't sell yourself short. There's times where I'm afraid to put you near a flame. Dove right in. Thank you for that.
Hey, no problem.
You drove that one right in for
There you
me. And don't believe me, I know that you did it on purpose. The gamesman, when he comes in here, I love the visual bit where he's coming through the walls and we've got the whole league. The confidence level here. Lantern, contain him. Plastic Man with the halt. Superman is ready. Every one of them, there's no delay in reaction. These are veterans at this point. And it is, Kyle Rayner is probably the green...
Come on,
there you go.
The greenest of all. And I really don't mean it that way, but it is kind of funny using it at that end. But he's experienced at this point. He has done so much as a Lantern that he is not a rookie by any stretch anymore. A rookie amongst these people, yes, but a rookie in general, no. These are hero, and that was one of the great things about this grouping, and this is to me what the Justice League is. I think we do have this now with the new league that's forming, and it's so great to see when we talk about what's great about DC Comics. It's great to see a league here that this, to me, what's the Justice League? It's when you've got a gathering of the absolute best heroes of the universe. There's a lot of them that can be on reserves that could also fit into this grouping right now. But this grouping definitely feels like a Justice League. I do think the group that's in Robinson's current run with Bagley has the potential to feel just like this. Because all the players are there. They're all veterans. So I'm hoping that this is what we get out of the current book. Because I loved this moment. It was just a very powerful moment. You don't know what you're dealing with. Contain it, then learn.
I like the fact that, we really don't, Superman's not rude throughout this thing. We already talked about that one scene when he first meets up with the JLA. He was kind of very rude to them. Here's this guy.
This hasn't happened yet, though.
Right, it hasn't happened yet. And I like that, the fact that this was Superman how I would expect them to be. Yes, they got a cage on the guy because he's an uninvited guest in their base. But the whole time he's like, I'm Superman. It's just like, it was a...
This is before the game has begun, though.
Right.
We aren't there.
Yeah, and it's
he's
also
laying it out.
before Superman has experienced the Marvel Universe.
Right. But I do like that. See, this is where it began to work for me when my multiple read-throughs, the parts that I were angry about. Exactly what you're noting here, Jim, is, yes, he's very calm here. He's what we expect from Superman. It isn't until the game's laid out and you actually see him in the Marvel Universe that we start to see, wait a minute, he's being influenced by the events going on around him in a way that it's taking him out of character. It's not that he's being written poorly.
No, I know, and that's...
No, and I'm applauding you for pointing that, because that's exactly... These are the things that I started to notice that made me go, oh, wow, that's really cool. And this is what made Batman and Captain America start to notice what was going on around them. The fact that people around them, including themselves, were behaving differently. But he lays out this quest here for 12 items. Items of power, 6 from each universe, and they must be assembled, or countless billions will die. Now, he's not lying there... the sense that he's putting a game together. He's just not telling them the whole truth.
Yeah.
And they're thinking that they're going to be gathering the items to keep for themselves to use as talismans or weapons against the threat. Not realizing that they're being put on a quest to gather them for either Krona or for this game's master to use against each other.
Right.
Really, I love that he has set up here and we'll see, he's setting up his own power play later on down the road, but it's very cool. The lasso. Let me ask you this. Do you think he could fool the lasso?
See, I was thinking probably.
But he chose not to?
Yeah. I was just thinking, one, it's, again, a different universe, being coming in from a different universe, so maybe the laws and whatnot are kind of different, but also just his power levels. He does have heightened power levels. So, and I wasn't 100% certain how this, lasso was operational. Like the current version of the lasso is probably more powerful than this version of the lasso. So it's like
this is the lasso of truth still. So it was.
Oh, okay.
This is after the Perez run, and it's been pretty well established. This lasso is the real deal.
Okay,
but I loved this part. What he said was the truth. I know that much, but there was more behind it. Something he wasn't saying. So. I agree that and it was brought up by the heroes to say whether or not he could beat it. Does he have those power levels? But to me, that was very interesting to see that Diana was saying that I can feel there's something more to what he's saying. And we do see that later. I loved the reveal here, though, that there's more to come, and we're going to have to see what it is. Boy, that Watcher.
Yeah.
Looking in the window. It's super creepy seeing it in a DC world. Especially when they're looking up behind him and he's sitting right there. It's just, I don't know that I would sleep well. You imagine, looking out your window, there's Uatu, and then even if you put down the blinds, you're going to peek to see if he's still looking. And ultimately, he's got those kind of eyes that no matter which way you're looking, they're always looking the way you are.
And my guess,
and remember, a little bit later, it causes Firestorm some consternation as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Too funny. I love this, though. I love the humor value of it. Yet it doesn't take anything away for just how powerful that particular character is. Wally now sets up the vibrational frequency to help transfer them over to this world, not being able to go himself, which, I don't know, would you be relieved or would you be...
See, I would. I sometimes have an adventurous spirit, and I want to explore different stuff. But if I was Wally, I'd actually be very happy to stay back, do the flash treadmill and the various flash facts and flash tricks to have you travel over there. But I'm going to stay right here where I know I can do what I can do. But it's I don't know. I think that'd be kind of really weird and creepy. If you're used to this one power, you're used to this power set, knowing that going into that other world, you won't have it anymore.
What about you, Kent? If it's a new world, a chance to explore a brand new domain, but your powers that you normally are able to rely on are not going to be accessible, do you go or do you stay?
I think Wally, having had the experience that Wally has had, I think I'd be just as happy to stay back and let the guys that could do the job do the job.
I got to agree with that. I think the defining moment there would be, if I didn't have the experience that Wally had, I would be curious. And I think curiosity for me would win out, and I would still go. As long as I had a guarantee I could get back. I would need that guarantee, but I think the adventurous side of me would take over then. But Wally's experience would definitely be the shoe-in for me. I do like that it does feel like Wally's really upset.
Yeah.
Because and note that as soon as, I think it's Steel concocts an invention to allow him to carry the Speed Force with him, away he goes.
I do think, though, it fits the Justice League era that we're reading here, that Wally would want to go, because Wally and Kyle both were the two that they were part of this magnificent group of heroes who were the JLA icons. And the two of them were constantly, not because of the other heroes, because of themselves feeling like we need to prove our spot. We need to prove that we belong there. So for Wally, for them to leave him behind, for him he'd be like, I need to be there. I need to be a part of this. I need to show. They weren't slapping him in the face, but I could see him feeling that way. And that was very, very cool. Now, the Avengers do the right thing here. You actually probably love this bit, Jim. They're calling for backup.
Yep.
They're calling in the reservists. This is a universe-wide crisis. We need to get everybody in here. We're getting people that are popping in from worlds that, where are they coming from? What does this all mean? We need to get everybody in and on board. I always liked Hawkeye. Hawkeye was always a character. Clint Barton is just plain awesome. When he comes in, on the surface, is he a Green Arrow clone? Is he a Green Arrow Hawkeye clone? I think both characters have been so well established as being something so different from each other. Yet I love that there's an immediate rivalry between the two when they're together. It works on so many levels. I love both characters for this reason, though. And they bring him in. This whole testing out, trying to find out what's going on, trying to get to the bottom of it. I love that when we see Iron Man here, he's so clearly been up too long. You would be pulling up late nights because if you go to sleep, who knows what's going to happen? 1 hour lost could be the end of your universe. And that to me, to be a member of the Avengers of the Justice League means that you are the ones that everybody looks to. If you fall asleep, if you shirk your duty, it could be the end of everything. This is where being a hero, it looks all fun when we read it as fans, but the reality of being a hero, the responsibility of being a hero, it's a calling. It is something where, these guys, the reason why we respect them so much is because we see moments like this, where they don't quit, they don't take a nap, they don't go have lunch, whatever. Who knows when these guys last ate? Mm-hmm. And if they did, it was an energy bar or something like that. They didn't stop.
5-hour energy drinks.
Yeah, exactly,
Jarvis takes care of them.
Yeah. But I mean, it really is something that they're passing on the fly when they're eating, very similar to what we've seen with Batman. And we get this little glimpse of when the Justice League are over here, that all of these worlds, they're seeing Genosha, which anybody who's read the X-Men, the site of mutant devastation there and what was happening there, they were killing them just for being different, destroying them. Things that we've seen in our world. Latveria, to see Dr. Doom as this ruler, that really people are so afraid to die. We're seeing a cruel dictator in this world. Mm-hmm. And the Hulk, what else do you say with the Hulk other than they're seeing the absolute world at its worst.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing the heroes that, like Genosha. The powerful part about Genosha is when we've seen characters like the X-Men save people who could have died in Genosha. Even though there was that devastation there. And to me, it's much more powerful to see heroes fight against those overwhelming odds, to step into the face of adversity where these are people with powers that all died here.
Yeah.
Those mutants to go in there were risking their own deaths. They're seeing the worst of the world instead of the best of the world. And they've got to learn along the way through working with the Avengers that the heroes on this world are actually a lot more than they're realizing. Because they're only seeing one side of the story, they're getting a very negative picture, the Punisher. I love that Batman told everybody not to do anything. And when it comes to the Punisher in that moment, and it was off camera, as it should be, we're left to imagine in our heads what the battle was like with Batman and the Punisher. Yeah, I would have wanted to see it, but I think it's that Hitchcock, let's let you do it in your head. I love that moment was, we just get to hear from Plastic Man, yeah, he had to go fight the spandex-clad bad guy at the moment. How cool was that?
Well, and
helping the drug dealers.
Well, and because, yes, they're drug dealers, yes, they're bad guys, but you don't kill. And it was that whole Punisher is going against the Batman no-kill rule, so he had to take him down. And I thought that was just a really cool kind of moment, because a lot of times people look at, Punisher as this guy who heavily armored and he's armed, kicks butt, and people look at Batman, see the Dark Knight and the more brooding Batman who's a little bit more on the edge kind of deal, but there always has been that line. There always has been that no-kill line that he doesn't cross, and it was just so cool that those two came to blows, and it was that ideology that Batman has. He stuck to it. I really ate that up.
He seems a bit abashed on this page. Plastic Man is berating him. Look at the set of his jaw, and he's just basically, he knows that he was kind of acting as do as I say, not as I do, kind of thing here, and he's being called down.
When you're looking at that, I think one of the things that fits there, though, is he's not really reacting to Plastic Man, though. It's a very much Batman's kind of like, I did my thing. We're not going to discuss this. I am not going to acknowledge you. I'm not giving you the time of day here. Plastic Man's totally right, and I think the whole league is just kind of looking at him at that moment. But there is that moment where he's just kind of looking at Plastic Man and just kind of saying, I'm not going to acknowledge you. There's no emotion. There's absolutely no emotion from Batman, and that's so vintage Batman. He's not going to show him, even if internally he's like, he's right, he's not going to admit that.
Yeah,
he just, that's not how he's wired.
Jump back to Latveria and make what is a rare correction to the Comic Speak Geeks guys. Comic Geek Speak guys. I think I messed that up, but anyway, and it's more that when I was reading or listening to that and paging through this, the little sign that the people are holding there, in front of Doom. They speculated that it meant "so says Doom." And they went, and explained that they were assuming that Latvian is a Romance language and based that translation on Latin, the Latin verb dico, which means to say. Well, I know enough to know that wasn't Latin, and that's not a Romance language. It took me a little bit of looking to figure out what it was. It's Magyar. It's Hungarian. And what it really means, it's pronounced Dicerit Doom, and it basically means praise Doom. Just something I wanted to point out there. Geographically it works. That's the area of the world that Latveria is always portrayed as being in, kind of over there in the Central Europe, Northern Balkans, or something like that.
It fits what Aquaman is saying. They cheer him, sing his praises under the threat of death. Singing his praises. This is no way for a monarch to act. We should nothing, Aquaman. Just observe and move on.
Yeah.
It fits the dialogue from Aquaman, so there seems to be...
I love it. I love it when comics creators do their homework, and do something like this and get it right. I've seen other examples where they try and don't get it right. But, I love it when, something like this, a little detail that is so obscure that doesn't matter to most people, those of us who do see it, and we all notice the different little things, but and it'll be right, and you think, wow, they know what they're talking about.
Superman, at this moment, we go back to the bit where Plastic Man was berating. We get to see this angry reaction from Superman, this is where I think he's out of character, but it's not for what's going on in the story. Right. This world, it's lush, it's alive. There are heroes here, too, from what we've discovered. How can they allow this? How can they stand for it? Don't they care? I mean, he doesn't know what's going on in this world. He hasn't seen what the heroes have done. Soups? And I love that Plastic Man, who normally would do a joke, there's no joke in here. He's totally dumbfounded and baffled. That's where it works for me. Let's get these artifacts. I don't trust the people here. I'll feel better if we decide how to use them. And he is being influenced. I don't know if it's so much by the world, but I feel there's a puppet master at work here. I feel this is the games master kind of.
I think there's some manipulation. There's
because there's got to be the two groups fighting. There can't be a possibility the two of them can have a peaceful, like what Captain America and Batman do. I think the two of them deliberately do go off alone together because of this, because they know they're being watched. Monster Island. Fin Fang Foom, Googam, and Tricephalus are the creatures that we see here on this island. And Monster Island was something I remember from like Godzilla movies and stuff like that. And this is like Marvel Universe's version of that type of thing, Mole Man's Island. And it's kind of cool. I love how Kyle Rayner kind of ties it in with video games.
Well, all three of these monsters were created by Jack Kirby. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then you've got the artist. And hasn't in the comics hasn't Kyle himself actually been a comic book artist before?
Oh yeah.
And notice he's saying those are some great looking monsters, though.
Now, what's
giving
interesting,
praise to the master.
Yeah.
And I've got to give credit to Perez here because the designs here that he uses are very reminiscent of Kirby. They're very Kirby-esque in their approach. So he definitely was giving a major nod to the styling of that particular artist. It's a beautiful drawing sequence in these, which shows a lot of love and respect for what that creator was. Because he could have done his own spin.
Yeah, but he kept it true, and that was a class thing to do.
And it does fit
with
his art style here. Then we get to see the big battle between them. And there's something cool about seeing the Justice League fighting the big bad monsters, of the Marvel universe like this. And to see these moments where Fin Fang Foom is being basically shoved to the side. I like seeing Aquaman in these moments where we get to see just how strong that guy really is too. Because I think a lot of times that's forgotten. The most recent issue of Brave and the Bold with him and the Demon. I think you get to just really see what makes Aquaman unique and powerful. We saw it in the DVD release, too. I'm a big Aquaman fan. Ken, you mentioned earlier you're growing up with Aquaman and that he was a character that you related to. Are you talking about the old Aquaman cartoon series?
Yeah, it's been so long, I couldn't tell you exactly what my first exposure to these characters was. There's actually a thread on the discussion board, in relation to y'all's anniversary about, what was your first comic, and do you still have it, kind of thing. And back during that period, I couldn't tell you if my first comic book was, at home or in the barber's chair where my dad used to take me for a crew cut every week, it seemed like, or what, or if it was, whatever. But I still have, and, I've actually bound 2 years of Aquaman from 1968, 1969. For me, that is the Aquaman. And it was, I remember what I remember first as being the Superman Aquaman hour. Where they would have those Filmation 10-minute little, they would have a Superman one, they would have an Aquaman one, and then they would have a rotating Teen Titans or Justice League or Green Lantern or Flash or whomever, and then they go and do it again for the next half hour. It was just wonderful.
I use little sound bites for those for a lot of the bullets I do on the show. I've got the DVD because they released them all on DVD. And it's really cool.
Yeah. Very dated, yes, but still very cool. Brings back all kinds of memories. And just to throw out something, mention of that run of Aquaman, starting, I think it's number 37 and on. It's actually, that was my first exposure to a comics great who passed away this past weekend, Dick Giordano. He was the editor, he was the inker, I believe, on that, but he was also the editor of that series, and I think he was perhaps the first comics creator that I ever was able to identify, was aware of as an individual by name, from his wonderful, very conversational style in the letter columns during that period. Yeah, we lost a great one this weekend.
It was funny. We were at the CGS Super Show, and Jamie D walked up to me. And he was, kind of casually walking around to people and quietly letting people know that, I heard this on Twitter. We don't know yet. We haven't gotten firm confirmation, but it looks like Dick Giordano had passed away over the weekend. And it was, the influence of that creator, both as an editor and as a creator, it's not what did he touch. It's more like what didn't he touch.
That's right, yeah.
It's... Even if you're a more current comic fan where you never really were exposed to... you and I obviously grew up with the influence of his work and editorial. We all today, because a lot of the creators today grew up in the same era, and we're seeing a lot of those influences, a lot of the things that he was a part of coming back today and being reimagined for a current audience today. But a lot of those foundation pieces are really due to that. Look what's going on with in Green Arrow right now, and Speedy and those type of things. That was that controversial era with Speedy and all that. He was a major part of that era.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, just a lot of the cool things that modernized Batman, very much a part of that era. So we're seeing Grant Morrison's heavily influenced by a lot of that. So the creators, during that, so that's a big loss. It's a very, very big loss. And just kind of, you're right, kind of a cool time to talk about that right now. And just unfortunately that bad news over the weekend. Yeah. Now we're starting to see here that on Monster Island, we're grabbing the first of these devices. And we get to also the first glimpse that with this Ultimate Nullifier, that this is not going to be easy. Because there is a whole other team that's playing this game as well and trying to get a hold of them. Diana catching the arrow. That was such a cool moment. Because you figure, now Hawkeye is the Marvel Universe's resident archer. If he fires a bow and arrow, and that bolt is flying, forget about the fact that there's tech involved in those arrows and things like that. The speed that's got to be going at that particular moment, for her to catch that thing flush and to stop it from moving is just so incredible. Yeah. That was a great moment.
And I like that we did get a reaction from him about it and stuff like that. That was just that was a nice, really cool first meeting moments between the two teams.
And the whole thing with him trying to remember where he's seen them before. And I love I love that he eventually throws out the whole Squadron Supreme reference. I was a big fan of the Squadron Supreme, that original 12-issue series when it came out. I read that one in the Marvel Universe. I don't know if either of you guys have read that.
I remember them mainly from that period of circa 1974, 75, when they appeared in the Avengers. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, this is just the Justice League light.
You know what, though? If you read this miniseries, the 12-issue mini that spun out of all that, where they actually were spotlighted, one of many miniseries from that era, but it's one of my favorite from that era. That 12-issue mini, I remember every month I was glued to that book, and the way it spotlighted each of the characters. It's a Marvel title, if I can, highest possible recommendation. You can read those. It's a very contained 12-issue miniseries about the Squadron Supreme. If you have any interest at all, go ahead and check them out, because that was really cool. It did lead to things like Supreme Power and stuff like that years later, but this is totally isolated and by itself, the 12-issue Marvel miniseries that year was a great year of comics to read that particular miniseries. So I can't give that book a higher recommendation. If you've never read it, it's Mark Grenwald was the writer on that one, and it was very, very cool. Very, very cool.
I think that's a little bit later. I'm not sure when that actually came out, but yeah, my main memory of them, they appeared in Avengers sometime around 74 or 75. I think it was someplace in the 140s in the original Avengers numbering. I think they had actually originated sometime back in the late 60s, though. I don't know the details, and I don't have it noted down here. The miniseries I'm talking about did come after that, because they'd had multiple appearances in the Avengers, and then eventually they got a Spotlight miniseries. But it was great, because it was one of those 12-issue year-long ones that just were filled with depth, and it was really great to see them in that capacity. So if anybody's into like Squadron Supreme, who are they? Read that miniseries, and it's a great ride. We get to see that they get flashback to the world, and I love that Clark does this is again team dynamics showing veterans. They don't just assume. Clark does the scan to make sure where they are, and he can see all of the proper places: Metropolis, Star City, St. Roche. I love that we're seeing all of these worlds, because you would do that. Let's scan first before we move. They all stay close together until we've got verification of where we are at. And then we flash back to the Avengers, who are in a similar way showing their own experiences. Hey, look at those two panels in the middle of that right-hand page, where they show the two islands and the two universes side by side. And it's how it contrasts with what Superman earlier said about how lush and green and, it's lush, it's alive. And yet the Marvel version of the island is almost barren. It's the DC one that is green and so forth.
That world, that place, I didn't get much of a look at them, but if those were its heroes, I'm not impressed. Not with their world, not with their achievements, I'm not. Let's get back to the Watchtower. The artifact we have is bad enough. If those people have more, this could be unthinkably dangerous. And the venom that he's speaking about, those people from that world, that's where, again, I was like...
Yeah, it was really angering me until I realized what was going on, until I realized the story elements of it. And the look
on his face in particular.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not Superman. What the heck? That's not him. What's wrong here? What are they doing? And it was funny, because I am a bit of a conspiracy nut. I know that. The first I do usually jump towards the extreme conspiracy. So I'm wondering, I'm thinking, I knew this took place way back when. I'm like, was he on the outs with DC? Was he trying to give him a little jab saying, you kind of, I was wondering if there was like some backhand politics to try to make DC look bad.
You noticed the same thing with Captain America, though, didn't you?
Well, the thing that I noticed with Cap, he initially has that reaction, but he's able to overcome it when he and Batman have their fight. And that was the thing that got me, that kind of really, made me, it was kind of like sticking a thorn in my side, saying, wait a minute, why is Cap able to fight this and not Superman? Oh, man, and that's where the conspiracy theory really just flies off in my head initially.
Thor and Scarlet Witch were influenced by it, too, though.
Yeah.
Where you got to see that. Thor, I don't think it stands out as much, but it certainly did with Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I love that the Avengers discussion of all this is interrupted by Metron showing up. And I was starting to wonder, because Metron is more of, like, our universe's, I hate to say our universes like we live in the DC universe, but the DC universe's watcher. And he's here now, except he's taking a more active role, really filling them in on the 6 objects of power and where they are located, and gives them a mother box, which is an interesting tool that gives them an advantage at this point because they're able to directly track things down in a way that the Justice League can't, at least not in the same fashion.
Right.
And I love how this technology is something that the Marvel Universe heroes are able to kind of combine with their own technology to make something more of it. Thor, I agree with you, Jim, is an MVP.
Yeah.
Because you see him at these moments where the Atom has stayed behind and was watching all this, which I loved. But while he's staying behind and watching all this, if this be true, then these varlets must be stopped. Aye, and swiftly. The rage of Thor in those moments, I'm like, who can... Thor, when he's written right... Thor, I've had... I don't want to say I've had a love-hate relationship. I've had more of a love-indifference relationship with. In certain writers, like Walt Simonson, if you've read any Thor, you've got to read what Walter Simonson did with Thor.
Amen.
Straczynski recently had a really good run on Thor. Throughout the years, there's been times where I've really, really enjoyed reading various iterations of Thor. This is good Thor.
This one, it felt like what a true Norseman would feel like. He was the warrior race. It was, just that power and just, and for me, that's what I wanted out of, and I saw that, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I was glad that what I thought Thor should act like, what I thought he should be, I was seeing this. This is the thunder, this is the god of thunder, but it's not just the god of thunder, this is a Norse god, the warrior god, and I ate that up, and I really like seeing just him go forth, there was never any hesitation in his battle. There was never any maybe we should think this. No, it's fight on. I thought that was something I really got out of it, and that's
frustration. The frustration driving him to pull the hammer on Metron, to threaten him if he doesn't fill them completely in. And Iron Man, I love that he matter-of-factly realizes and this shows that the Avengers have had many dealings with these cosmic beings. Skip it, Thor. I'm sure he's taken a vow of mystery or something. These types always do. Maybe I can adapt the modulator, infuse us with their world's base signature, and it's not necessary, Iron Man, any more than are Thor's threats. Here, she will aid you. And just vanishes. And even Quicksilver can't catch him. That just shows you the actual powers that... Metron's a god. He's one of the new gods. And DC's new gods, if he doesn't want to be caught...
He's not going to be.
No. Back in Metropolis, the Avengers show up on the scene in the middle of a battle. I love it wasn't so much them stopping the battle that was interesting to me. It was them realizing that, oh my gosh, now we're being
people like us.
Yes.
Yeah.
and adore us. And they look at this world in a way... And we get to see from Captain America here, and this is where I got it. We don't have time for this, Avengers, or did you forget we've got a job to do? And we start to see him gradually as we see Superman being honored for peace, Wonder Woman honored, Supergirl honored, and the fact that there is a speedster museum here. I don't like it. Justice. This isn't justice. Look around. This is their city. It wasn't built by men. They must own this world like little tin gods, demanding the public's adoration instead of protecting its freedoms. Don't you feel it? It's sour. It's wrong. And even Scarlet Witch is totally shocked the way Plastic Man was when Superman was in the same position. They're being manipulated into an adversarial position. They're looking at this world, and Cap is a man of the people. In many ways, though, these guys are reaching out to the people. They can't see their worlds for what they are because they're being clouded by the games master and how they're being played here. Of course, they don't have any moment to reflect on any of this because the Justice League shows out. And that line that I did with the shambles, the shoddy world, and all that other stuff, comes up at this point with Superman. This 2-page spread is just plain gorgeous.
That's the money shot.
Oh,
yeah.
So pretty. In this particular moment, Plastic Man with the gun. his
2 guns.
Stick them up. Just such a great moment. Everyone at ready, though. Even though they're surprised by the whole thing, everyone's at ready. We see Hawkeye with an arrow out. We see Thor with the hammer ready. We see Scarlet Witch, just getting into a balance stand, just getting ready to react.
Yeah, it's ready for a fight.
And the same thing with the Leaguers as you're looking through. Aquaman's arms at ready. Kind of almost holding the Flash at bay at that moment as they're getting ready to make a stand. I just love this moment. It was just a very, very powerful confrontation between two teams. Go ahead,
Here's
Ken.
an observation that I owe to the CGS guys, the symbolism, of the Justice League, up in the air, looking down on the Marvel, characters. Just kind of like Cap was just saying, like they're
gods.
little tin gods,
And that is, that is something when you take a look at that, you can't help but notice that. Look at the city, too, in the background. You can see how Cap and them would think that. Look at Metropolis with the monorail, with it looks like, and Superman on the screen in the background.
Yeah.
It is something where if you look at it on the surface, it looks very much like we don't have a city that's really like that.
Yeah.
We have cities.
I wasn't reading Superman, during this period, but wasn't this the city that, if I understand just from other references, that some iteration of Brainiac had built?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
I don't know what era of I'm trying to remember what era of Metropolis this was. I know what you're talking about.
I was thinking that there was some story that was related to the year 2000 that I have not read, but my understanding was, the Brainiac 13 comes to mind. I could be totally wrong on that, but that somehow Brainiac Tech had built or rebuilt Metropolis on this grand futuristic scale.
It does fit. Metropolis was always the city of tomorrow, just like Superman was the man of tomorrow. It was always the city of tomorrow. And when I say that it's not like any city we have now, if you take a look at like a Chicago or a New York, both of them are very much, these big cities and all that. But if you look at Metropolis, it looks somehow, and maybe that goes off a little bit of what you're saying, Ken, about this Brainiac 13. I don't know if this particular version was created by any of the future tech, but it does look very much like a modern, a next generation version of what we see in Chicago and New York. It's like a little bit more clean. The city is a little bit more thriving.
Sean, I just found it. It's on, my old friend Wikipedia again, under the Brainiac article. Apparently, at the turn of the millennium, quoting again, Brainiac revealed that he had placed a sleeper virus in LexCorp's Y2K bug safeguards. It allows his future self, Brainiac 13, to travel from the 64th century to the present day, take control of Brainiac 2.5's body, and begin transforming Metropolis into the 64th century version of the city, which he controlled.
Never read that story.
I never did either. I just, like I said, remember it from other references.
And what issues was that?
It doesn't give issue numbers.
I'd like to actually seek that out.
Let me see.
I'm curious now.
Yeah,
let's see here. Let me find a footnote here. This is not well noted.
We can always throw out to listeners if any. I'm sure one of our listeners is going to know what story that is. They can just call in or email us with it. It's always kind of fun to have a listener come back because they may have read it and can actually share more details.
Yeah. Right now I can't readily find it. I may just be overlooking it in my haste, but yeah, I thought I remembered something about the Brainiac 13 something or other. But that's about all I need.
Cool.
Now we get into this moment right now where this is a confrontation that can go either way. And Hawkeye's trying to, he's talking about these are nothing but a bunch of Squadron Supreme wannabes, which is funny that the Squadron Supreme really was technically kind of like a Justice League analog, a way to have Justice League versus the Avengers without it actually being the Justice League.
Yeah.
5 gets you 10 that they're mind controlled. Stand down, all of you, and be taken into custody. This will be dealt with, but not while dangerous loose cannons like you are free jeopardizing our world's safety. GL, is it just me, or is Big Blue laying it on a little thick? It's not you. I don't know what's going on, but... And before they have a chance to really react to it, and this is the proof of see, to me, this is even more further proof that it's a game, and it's a game that's being very well played at this moment. It's being escalated on both sides. It's not just Superman, it's Captain America. Neither of them is talking rationally. Mister, I've got one word in response to your demand: nuts. I knew you were fascist overlords, and this just confirms it. And Superman's even baffled by this whole thing. Spread out, everyone. If these high and mighty stormtroopers want to take us in, they'd better be prepared to take their lumps. And Scarlet Witch has even come back. Cap, shouldn't we at least try to? But of course, Thor is being influenced as well. This is chess. These characters are being played. And this is the first moment we get to see it's not just the leaders, but certain players are being influenced at certain times to keep the battles going, to keep the sides working against each other, because if they come together, they may figure out that they're being played by higher beings, and that doesn't work for the game that Krona and the Games Master are trying to play here.
Especially the Swerve Game Master has, and the Swerve we're going to eventually see with the who's on what side and what is the actual prize they're fighting for. So I thought that was kind of a neat thing. And again,
I keep calling him Games Master. It's Grandmaster. I started calling him Games Master because that's his M.O. The Grandmaster is playing with Krona at this point. But he is a gamesman, and that's why I keep throwing that back in, because thematically I kept thinking to myself, like, this guy really isn't just the Grandmaster, he's the Games Master. It's all about games for him. As a god, I could imagine being a god would be a very lonely, isolated existence unless you have that's how Galactus winds up being the way that he is.
It is very lonely, Sean. It is very lonely. But ideal.
Wow.
You may want to get out of the room before the lightning strikes,
Yeah,
Sean.
Yeah. Well, this is part of that plastic I was talking about earlier on. And try to keep him away from open flames and things like that so he doesn't melt, but it'll be all right. We just kind of move along. Thor, though, at this moment, the throwing of the hammer, what a powerful moment. This was a great choice because thou hast invaded our realm, sought powerful and destructive weaponry, threatened our universe entire, and thou dost treat us as if we are the malefactors? I have had enow. Come, Avengers, let us show these caitiffs what we think of them. The throwing of the hammer at that moment, the crack.
Oh, that was awesome.
It drew blood on Superman.
Well, and it was funny because as soon as I saw that, I was like, yes, Mjolnir is magically enchanted hammer. Magic is a weakness of Superman. It's gonna have that.
Yeah.
Add to the fact that this is the Thunder God. This is the God of Thunder. Come on. He's got to have enough power backing the hammer as well. It's not just, it's a 1-2 combo. You got the magical hammer, plus you got the guy wielding the hammer is going to put the hurt on Superman. I loved seeing that. And normally I don't like seeing Superman take his lumps, but one, he was acting like a jerk, and I was glad someone gave him a smackdown.
Thor and Captain America were too, though.
Well, here's the thing. Captain America, I completely agree. For me, in my head, Thor was acting in character, I thought.
Me too.
Yeah, because, and what I will admit, I really don't know what Thor's character was, because I never followed him.
Cap would have reined him in normally, though.
Yeah.
So you're right. Maybe it is Thor. Thor was outraged and in character. I agree with you. No, I'm actually going to take that back.
Because I figure, as I said, a Norse god, the god of thunder, he's going to have that hot-headed attitude that normally the responsible leadership would keep in check. But now you got Cap being influenced, and, we're getting a throwdown.
I want that hammer. I want the ability to wield it the way Thor does, though. I mean, oh my gosh, that power in that panel right there. When he's swinging that thing around, that is a beautiful piece of artwork. One little tiny panel at the bottom there, and that next huge panel of Superman getting cracked with that means nothing if you don't have that panel beforehand.
Yeah.
Because, is that amazing to see him wield that. I mean, that just looks like it's going to go through just about anything. Now, we get this kind of closing epilogue here, where we get to see the Grandmaster really laying out there, and so it begins. They do not know they play a game of my devising, but the conflict is well established, and the stakes quite real. Yes, but you realize, I hope, that Krona has no intention of abiding by your rules. If he wins, he will claim his prize. If he loses, he'll do what he must to gain what he seeks. And that's so true. That fits Krona. I love that this is the same Krona that we do see years later in Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
In that series.
Very literally so.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's something I think we'll talk about, yeah.
Because, I mean, that for me was something that was so neat about reading this again and kind of seeing this all laid out, that this is a character that has a rich history in the Green Lantern books, but so much of this is very much a character who, Busiek, when he writes him so well.
Okay.
Yeah.
His obsession, and how far would you go for an obsession? And what happens when your obsession becomes everything? Krona has no friends. He has no allies. His solitary reason for existence is to learn why the world is what it is.
To see the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to read this and then to have read Trinity and to see what ultimately winds up with him. I love that Ray Palmer's watching all of this and finding out that the Grand Master has a scheme that he didn't reveal, that Diana's, and I love that we see in that one panel where he's talking about that, you know, that this was just to buy some time. It's kind of like he's looking at Diana's image because he knows he told the truth with the lasso, but what she said is 100% right. He didn't tell everything. And we're going to see that right there. It's nice foreshadowing. It's a great, great first issue.
Hey, one thing I want to just point out here. Look at the relative sizes of Metron and Grandmaster. Now, isn't there some kind of understanding in the DC universe back when the New Gods were alive that actually that in their native form that they're actually much larger beings, but that somehow if you go to the name of their Apocalypse, the name of their
or New Genesis, New Genesis, depending on it depends on if you're visiting Darkseid or if you're visiting the New Gods. You'd actually be on New Genesis if it was the New Gods.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. I'm sorry, but basically same thing. That somehow the boom tube adjusts your size. I've read that somewhere. You know that Darkseid and New Gods' actual size in their own environment is much larger than human, and yet look at how much smaller Metron is than the Grandmaster. I don't know if there's any significance to that.
Well, I think what it shows is just how much larger than that Grandmaster would be.
Yeah.
Or that Metron is adjusting his size to be more in tune with the heroes. I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting.
I don't know. There's a couple other things that I wanted to point out. One is, and it's something that is lost in the publication of the trade paperback, and I presume the hardcover, which I have not had a chance to really look at, versus the original issues. If you look at the title page, each the title pages of the 4 issues has the JLA and the Avengers logos on it. But each time it's presented in a different way that matches basically what the story is in that particular issue. For instance, in this first issue, it just simply says, the world's greatest superheroes, the JLA. Meet Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers. Book 1, A Journey into Mystery. Which of course is an allusion. Each one of the issues' title is the name of a classic DC or Marvel, in this case Marvel, comic. Journey into Mystery, of course, was the title in which Thor first appeared. But as we go further through, and I'll try to notice it as we hit that point, the way they present these titles, the logos, changes. For instance, in the second one, The Clash of the Millennium Continues. Marvel Comics and DC Comics proudly present Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the Avengers, versus, in big emphasis, versus the world's greatest superheroes, the JLA. Book 2, A Contest of Champions. And that's something that they unfortunately seem to have excised from the collections. Well, and I wish they had not.
They are labeled, though, like Book 2 is labeled A Contest of Champions.
Right. But it's that prefatory bit where you've got first they meet.
Right.
And then it's verses, very very prominent. And if we go to Book 3, which we can look at it later, but you've got a similar thing there where it says just simply the team up of the Millennium, the JLA and the Avengers. And it kind of matches the theme of each book, because Book 1, they basically first meet. The second one is basically the big conflict. And then the third book is where they start really working together. And I'm not going to carry it through to the fourth one just yet. We'll get to it in time. But it's just something I wanted to point out, because I have both the original issues and the trade paperback, and that was something I immediately noticed when I was looking through the 2 different versions.
And Book 1 is a classic Marvel title, and Book 2 and 3 are DC titles.
Yeah, I don't remember how they match up, but it's 2 of each. 2 of each.
Yeah, it's Strange Adventures, and The Brave and the Bold are the DC titles, and then Contest of Champions and Journey into Mystery, which Contest of Champions was that great... Did you guys ever read that one?
I did not. However, in reading up, isn't that where the Grandmaster was first introduced?
Yeah.
Okay.
Never read it.
You know what? I shouldn't say. I say that so matter of fact, like I know. That was my first exposure to the Grandmaster, but I don't know that that's his first appearance. But yeah,
I think it was Sean, because I made some notes that we just kind of blew past here, where we first are introduced to the Grandmaster. But let me look here. Of course I can't. Oh yeah. Also the instigator. Well, okay, this doesn't say introduced. Maybe he wasn't introduced, but he was the instigators of Marvel's very first big company crossover, Contest of Champions, in 1982.
And that mini was, at the time, I remember that being so cool, because it was all the Marvel heroes fighting each other. You know, it was a big, to see who was the best of the best, and it was very cool.
I didn't read that one.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I see here just adjacent to it from Comic Geek Speaks footnotes. The Grandmaster had also instigated the Avengers conflict with the Squadron Sinister, later known as the Squadron Supreme, in Avengers 69 in October of 1969.
Wow.
So that's when they were first introduced under the name of Squadron Sinister.
And that is
I just answered my own question. Grandmaster was introduced at least back in 1969, so he was not introduced in Contest of Champions.
Cool.
Now I can get out of here.
Once again, sponsoring us this episode is ComicCollectorLive.com, your comic book management source. DCBService.com, where you can be checking out right now in the beginning of June the brand new discounts, anywhere from 40 to 75% off. Just amazing discounts from DCBService.com. I always look forward to this time to seeing how much I can save on this wonderful hobby that I love being a part of. It gives me a chance to read more books. So thank you, DCBService.com, for providing that pre-order opportunity for me. InStockTrades.com. You can check out Batman the Cult, one of the greatest DC Universe stories of all time, in my opinion. Jim Starlin, Bernie Wrightson, Batman vs. Deacon Blackfire. $19.99 regularly, 47% off, only $10.59. That will be airing the first week in July. Thank you very much for your patience on that episode. That's one that I'm in particular looking very forward to record. I've wanted to do this one since we've started recording this podcast, because it is a story that's near and dear to my heart. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to continue exploring JLA Avengers with issue 2. And we're also going to be doing more Speeding Bullets, more chatting about some of just the great books in the DC Universe that we've been wanting to chat about for quite some time. I also have over the next 2 weeks a very special episode that we recorded. Jim and I talked to the director of Hero Tomorrow, the co-director of Hero Tomorrow. It's herotomorrow.com. If you haven't had a chance to check out that film, we have a really great discussion with the director. He joined us for about an hour and a half, and we're going to be editing together that interview for you. It's going to be a special bonus episode, so it's not going to be in place of one of our episodes. It's going to be a bonus release. And I was a big fan of this film. It's something, and Jim was too. We had a great discussion with him about the creation of an independent film and the process that it takes to put that together, and what it was like to work with the actors, and just, it was filmed in Ohio. So for us, it was kind of cool to be able to kind of reminisce about what that was like. But it's just a wonderful film, and it's herotomorrow.com. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, do yourself a favor and go to the website. There's a lot of trailers on the site, and a lot of it's a cool interactive website. And there's actually going to be a comic book associated with it coming out as well in the future. So it's definitely going to be a whole cool interactive world and experience that's coming out of Hero Tomorrow. So once again, herotomorrow.com, and it's something we want to support because we just think it's very cool. And we will see you next week.
Bye.